Chapter 274. When a man and a woman maintained gazing at each other for a long time, without any physical desires or emotional connection, they could only be understood as the manifestation and transmission of dominance. Luo Nin certainly did not think that much, but Bai Xinyan was able to grasp the subtle meaning within. From her point of view, Luo Nin was far from being able to dominate others with his current capital. He also hadn't truly felt the domination of others towards him. Then the answer was very obvious. This was merely a display of his emotions, nothing more. In other words, childish. There was really no meaning in maintaining the same channel as a childish boy. Bai Xinyan did not want to force herself. She simply reached out and pressed down on Luo Nan's eyes. The color of your pupils is really ugly. She let go of Luo Nan's hand before he could struggle. She circled to the other side, completely ignoring Luo Nan's expression. She was pondering something in her mind. This kid's hostility has been growing more and more intense since Frost River reality. It's completely unreasonable. Luo Nan pressed down on his ears while she was pondering. He subconsciously took 2 steps away. He must have received a message from the psychic wave network. The person contacting him at this time was most likely He Yuan. 2 seconds later, he received a communication request from Bai Xinyan. It was He Yuan on the other end. This was a 3-way communication initiated by He Yuan. Bai Xinyan was not a member of the society, but for the sake of convenience, she applied for temporary permission to use the Hexaear. Ouyang Chun was always very generous when it came to promoting the results of his own research. He handled it very easily. As a result, Bai Xinyan could observe the daily ecology of the Xia City branch from a close distance. She could gather the relevant information in a relaxed and happy manner. With such a big-hearted direct superior and many colleagues below her, the nun's heart would not be at peace after her retirement. Bai Xinyan smiled and greeted her with a bit of pity. "Hello, Sister Nun. Are those Imperial envoys finished serving you?" He Yuan ignored Bai Xinyan's teasing. Perhaps she did not want to mention those people at all. She cut straight to the point. "I hope to hear your opinion on Mr. Luo's study arrangements at the Daoguan." "I have no opinion. It's because your boss didn't mention this matter to me at all. I wonder if he has an opinion of Gym Master Xiao? Or does he have an opinion of me?" Luo Nan was speechless at such an open and above-board complaint. However, it was impossible for him to continue stubbornly at a time like this. He could only comfort himself by saying that he had learned a thing or two. Following that, he explained the main points of his trip to the dojo in a few words. In truth, there was nothing much to say. Gym Master Xiao's meaning was very clear. He could teach them, but he had to arrange the time well. At most, the time period required was somewhat against the norm. That was all. He Yuan pondered for a moment, then asked Bai Xinyan, "Will it affect your treatment?" "Not at the moment. Of course, if you guys don't mind, I can add a research project. I want to see whether or not student Luo Nan's absorption and transformation efficiency has improved under the guidance of Gym Master Xiao." "Oh, right. What do you think of Gym Master Xiao? Serious? Cordial? Smooth? Solitary? Aren't you going to explain to Secretary?" Bai Xinyan's ability to make use of every opportunity was unparalleled. Luo Nan rolled his eyes. He didn't want to answer. Fortunately, at this time, He Yuan forcefully returned to the main topic. "It's fine as long as it doesn't affect the treatment. For the other projects, there was still room for adjustment of the timetable. Some pure knowledge projects for general knowledge learning can be taught through the psychic wave network. It would be even more ideal if they could be combined with the health pod treatment. The training time at Frost River reality isn't much. The plan is feasible. However, let's postpone the particularly brain-burning classes for now. Excessive mental tension will certainly affect the effects of treatment. Most of them are general knowledge memories. The intensity isn't great. I will remind the others about the specifics." The 2 ladies took on the responsibility of drawing up the schedule, and it became the main axis of discussion. They only consulted Luo Nan, the person involved, on a few details. After taking a rough shape, He Yuan contacted the society members involved in the schedule one by one. Soon, a brand new schedule was completed. Luo Nan had a subtle feeling when he saw the brand new schedule appear before his eyes. It was as if he was an outsider. He was on a completely different rhythm from the two ladies. Luo Nan quickly suppressed this peculiar feeling. He asked, "Should I take this form tomorrow and contact Gym Master Xiao?" He Wayne grunted. She seemed to want to say something, but in the end, she simply said, "Show it to him. If there are any problems, you need to actually do it before you can make adjustments. Today, we'll first do an experiment. We'll see the effects of networked learning in the treatment pod." Bai Xinyan pressed down on Luo Nan's shoulder. "Hey, did you hear that? I told you to take off your clothes." Luo Nan gritted his teeth as he took off his clothes and entered the pod. Bai Xinyan was quite considerate in delaying the Frost River reality treatment. She gave a next hour to He Wayne. Today's general knowledge course was still the world order in and out of the psychic wave network. Luo Nan put on the immersive helmet early on, but he did not activate it for the time being. He connected to the psychic wave network through the Hexa ear and entered learning guidance mode, according to He Yuan's instructions. The first thing Luo Nan saw was the home page of the society. It was also the main interface of the game, 10 Days in the Wilderness. The scenery of the wilderness, which he had only seen with his own eyes in a few social practice classes, appeared before his eyes. The rust-colored soil was like waves of solidified ocean waves. It extended into the distance, seemingly without end. The bulletin board, which had the style of a Western cowboy, seemed to be within reach. Looking at this scene, it seemed that he would be able to enter the wilderness with just one more step. "Why don't you give it a try?" A clear and distinct voice rang in his ear. This feeling was far too real, so much so that Luo Nan instinctively turned his head. Then he saw He Wayne. Right now, He Wayne was still wearing a well-tailored professional suit. The material was navy blue, and the inside was a white shirt that would never go wrong. Then there were long pants that accentuated the slender shape of her legs. She appeared confident, clean, and lively. This was her usual style of dressing. She would not dress up in the slightest bit of use. She would not have any other adornments. Luo Nan often saw this sort of image, but today was a bit different. This was because He Yuan's body was clearly draped in a layer of dreamy light. The original meaning of this light was to remind him that what he saw was not a true form. But the light contrasted with He Yuan's jade-like porcelain body. That sort of inhuman texture had a powerful impact that made Luo Nan lose his voice for a time. Chapter 275. Luo Nan was more or less in a daze when faced with He Yuan's new image. He only woke up from his dream when He Yuan's gaze, which seemed to have substance, shot over. "Can I?" The Hexa ear invented by President Ouyang Chun was the terminal device of the psychic wave network. There were 6 communication levels in total. Most awakened were able to realize extremely convenient network functions through the first 3 levels. It was enough for daily use. The simulator belonged to the 4th communication level. Luo Nan had heard Mr. Bai talk about it before. This function was similar to the out-of-body state. One could realize the materialization of one's own logic on the psychic wave network. It was similar to the experience of virtual reality. This was already a relatively high level. Many people in the society couldn't handle it. Luo Nan was a mentally enhanced individual. He possessed the ability to send his soul and the out-of-body state early on. He had an advantage in this aspect compared to the majority of people. Mr. Bai had long determined that Luo Nan should be able to enter this level. But Mr. Bai also said that Luo Nan absolutely couldn't use the simulator function before the problem of the imbalance between body and soul was resolved. Otherwise, it was very likely that his soul strength would continue to grow, bringing even greater pressure to his body. He Wayne responded to this question. Because of the results of President Ouyang's logic world, the simulator function has undergone a large change. It is currently in a debugging state. After entering this level, the consumption of soul strength will increase exponentially. So as long as we control it properly, we can escape before the positive gain appears. Time is precious. We can begin. Okay. Luo Nan responded simply. He Wayne didn't directly engage in practical training. Instead, she reviewed the old and learned the new. Last time I told you about the concrete form of supernatural powers on the psychic wave network. Yes. Regarding supernatural powers, the East traditionally calls it chi. Some people in the West call it mana. Burners call it internal energy. The Society's official name is telekinesis. No matter what it's called, it's fundamentally an energy information bestowed with order by the ability user. Luonin really liked the term bestowed order. This was in line with the comprehension he had gained from cultivating to this day. This made him talk without end. Therefore, the hexaear invented by President Ouyang is called a telekinesis according to the Society's definition. Its built-in electronic components are not sophisticated, but it can guide psychic power to form a special terminal structure to achieve the analysis and control of energy information. The more he spoke, the more excited he became. From Luo Nan's perspective, the terminal structure of the hexaear was just a simple configuration. In terms of precision, there was still a large disparity between it and the external neuron and the deep-sea Type 4 dynamo core. It was even a bit inferior to the imitation chipset he had seen at Frost River Reality. But the most amazing thing about this invention was that it made full use of the ability user as a carrier. Through guidance, a relatively simple structure could be used to great effect. If a description had to be made, then the dynamo core and the imitation chipset were roughly equivalent to fully automatic weapons. As long as one knew how to operate them, they would be able to display astonishing effects in the corresponding field very quickly. As for the Lu Air, it was like a famous sword in ancient times. In the hands of a child, it might not even be able to kill a chicken. But in the hands of a peerless swordsman, it could defeat 1,000 troops and be invincible. Cough, of course, this description might not be appropriate. Luo Nan had yet to truly explore the dynamo core's inner workings. He did not have an accurate understanding of the upper limits of the hexaear, but this did not hinder his feelings of admiration towards President Ouyang Chun. This kind of simplification and precise and appropriate structure made him a beginner who had been painstakingly studying soul configuration to improve efficiency, only sigh in amazement. If his soul configuration had been purified to this degree, the external neuron would not have been stuffed to the point of bursting from the rapid growth of soul strength. Luo Nin thought about his current situation of being helpless when facing the enormous barrier lake. He had the impulse to run over and take Ouyang Chun as his master. He Wayne was not surprised by Luo Nan's deep understanding of the hexaear and the psychic wave network. She had experienced Luo Nan's outstanding ability to understand this course during her last lecture. This was under the premise that the political form and content were not involved. She just added a bit. In the first 3 levels of communication, the hexaear only needs to transmit and interpret the information flow. But when it comes to the simulator level, it involves the sharing of energy. In other words, the telekinesis of tens of thousands of people is used to support an enormous virtual world. In this world, the transmission of energy and information is extremely efficient. Just like last time when we faced that fellow who controlled the human-faced arachnid, Luo Nin nearly blurted out Mo Luan's name. During the operation against Jack back then, Elder Mo Luan of the Bloodflame Order had brought the human-faced arachnid to hunt for food. It had brought He Wayne and the others a great deal of trouble. In the end, He Wayne had borrowed Ouyang Chen's power through the psychic wave network to repel the arachnid. That scene was still fresh in Luo Nan's memory. He could not help but ask, can it be done as long as one enters the simulator level? In theory, it's possible, but the burden is very heavy and the authority required is very high. Perhaps there will be improvements in the future. The psychic wave network has undergone a fundamental change due to the integration of the logic world. What we need to do next is to understand it as comprehensively as possible before most people arrive. He Wayne's reminder made Luo Nan suddenly realize that he was clearly standing at the entrance to the wilderness, but he did not see the silhouette of a single person. How many people usually come here? The average number of people online is around 800. That's a lot. How many awakened are there in the entire Xia city? I'm talking about the entire world. He Wayne supplemented with an explanation. Aside from mentally enhanced people who can send their souls and leave their bodies, The vast majority of people have to become architects before they can come into contact with this level. And sending their souls and leaving their bodies are extremely rare among ordinary awakened. So under normal circumstances, every person you come into contact with here is a veteran. Luo Nan was a bit stunned. And isn't it a bit early for me to come here? He Yuan did not respond to this question. She walked slowly, stepping into the wilderness with a single step. The radiance of her translucent figure caused the dark red background color to brighten up. Then she turned to look at Luo Nan. The name of the society is the Wilderness Explorer Society. The main direction is the wilderness. Of course, this also includes the even more dangerous oceans. President Ouyang chose the 10 days in the wilderness game as the main interface. This wasn't a random choice. This was a very good place to learn basic tactics. We'll focus on adapting today. If there aren't any abnormal reactions, then Cragburst will lead you here to learn tactical commands for the next few days. He is also the only one among your instructors who can enter the 4th level. The other classes will be interspersed. Luo Nin knew that the time for idle chatter was over. He nodded in agreement. There's one more thing. He Wayne suddenly smiled. This smile came without any warning. It was resplendent and dazzling under the reflection of the illusory radiance. It was dazzling. Then she waved her arm through the air. A second later, a mirror appeared at the border of the wilderness. The mirror reflected a ball of fuzzy light. It was like a drifting mist. In the center of it, one could faintly make out the shape of a tetrahedron. This was... Luo Nan suddenly realized something when he saw the angle of the mirror. All right, the style was quite appropriate. The problem was that Luo Nan had never seen such a dilapidated salon before. He Wayne led Luo Nan to walk on the central street of the small town. There was not a single soul in sight. The entire small town looked as if it had just been ransacked by a tornado. The vast majority of the houses had collapsed into ruins. Only a few buildings remained in their original state. Practically every building is an independent section. A portion of them are portals for the game. They provide entertainment for people, but most of them are experimental models. They are the crystallization of the wisdom of many people. What's going on right now? The influence brought about by the logic world. He Wayne spoke softly. Since President Ouyang added the results of the logic world into the mix, the simulator's structural laws have undergone great changes. The vast majority of experimental models are unable to adapt to the changes in the environment. They have all been destroyed. The logic world? Luo Nin had a general understanding of the principles of the construction of a logic world. The structure of deep interference between the mental and the material was indeed very unfriendly. But the method of recreating the world through spatial faults was truly a mountain to behold. Sister He, are you saying that this place is equivalent to another logic world? He Wayne shook her head. This isn't my field of expertise. Luo Nin couldn't get an answer. He turned his head to look all around, but he couldn't see things clearly. He thought for a bit and walked to the edge of a ruin. He lowered his head to size up the rubble and rubble. The shape of a snowflake. How orderly. These ruins looked messy and disorderly from afar. But upon closer inspection, Luo Nin realized that each piece of debris displayed a certain structural pattern. He could find some sort of rule in each piece. It was nearly impossible to accomplish this in the real world. The difference between natural and artificial. Luo Nin extended his hand and picked up a piece of rubble. He wanted to seriously study it, but his fingertips lightened just as he lifted it halfway. The rubble fell to the ground. Luo Nin was a bit stunned. Chapter 277. Luo Nin instinctively reached out his hand to grab the crushed rock. The feeling of touch, weight, and so on still existed. He really did grab the crushed rock. Right now, he was squatting on the ground with his back to He Yuan. His picking and tossing actions were very normal. He Yuan's attention wasn't on this. She took advantage of this time to continue introducing the simulator. The psychic wave network was established by President Ouyang. The virtual world is also endowed with basic order by him. However, President Ouyang didn't completely control it. Instead, he gathered the collective wisdom of researchers and endlessly adjusted it, turning individual order into public order. Bloodrock Town is one of the important pivots in establishing order. Luo Nan's attention was diverted a bit by He Yuan. He withdrew his gaze from the crushed rock and turned his head to ask, "Isn't this very troublesome?" Actually, what Luo Nan wanted to say was, why did he have to strip away his exclusive authority without rhyme or reason? This would certainly impede him, right? He Yuan was just about to respond when her gaze shifted to the side. Luo Nan looked over as well and saw the largest public exchange area in the town. It was similar to a tavern. The wooden swinging door swayed with a banging sound, and a figure walked out. There were other people in the town. The other party clearly heard the conversation between Luo Nan and He Yuan. He directly opened his mouth and said, "How can a single person control the complete structure of a virtual world? Even if they do, who would come here under the conservative and closed rules and order?" This was a man around 40 years old. He could be said to be in the prime of his life at this age. The newcomer's appearance was indeed decent. He had a tall stature and wore a fitted suit. His accessories were extremely exquisite, but they didn't match the environment of the town. Actually, He Yuan was also like this. The two of them were dressed like white-collar workers and gold-collar workers in large corporations. They weren't explorers wandering the wilderness. Plus, they clearly knew each other. After interrupting, the person greeted, "I heard that the simulator has been modified. I specifically asked President Ouyang for temporary privileges to come and take a look. I'm not bothering you guys, right?" He Yuan responded with a faint "Mr. Yuan" and didn't say anything else. Mr. Yuan revealed a faint smile as he walked over from the main street. However, he didn't go to He Yuan's position. Instead, he walked to Luo Nan's side. His tall figure formed a striking height difference with Luo Nan, who was crouching on the ground. Luo Nan wanted to get up, but Mr. Yuan spoke a step ahead of him. In this day and age, no one can eat alone. Everyone can abandon anyone who wants to form a monopoly. Just like a listed company, the rules and profits obtained must reflect the interests of every shareholder. So I have to say, President Ouyang has made a very wise choice. Who is this? Luo Nan finally stood up. He really didn't like the attitude of this person. It should be said that he was disgusted by the large capital of Quantum Corporation. He didn't like all such remarks. Moreover, this person's evaluation of Ouyang Chun was rather arrogant. To think that he was still in the psychic wave network. Did he not even understand basic respect? A light flashed in Luo Nan's mind when he thought of this. He had a general idea of the identity of the person who had come. Sure enough, He Yuan gave Luo Nan an introduction. "Little Luo, this is Mr. Yuan Fei of the Society's headquarters incident investigation team." Xiao Luo. Luo Nan discovered that he had been demoted. In reality, there was no problem with He Yuan addressing him this way. In fact, it was even more appropriate. He also knew that there might be some meaning behind it. But the human heart was subtle and hard to understand. His heart skipped a beat when he heard this form of address. He didn't feel too good. Luo Nan's performance was wooden in Yuan Fei's eyes. He didn't understand human affairs. Speaking of which, it was quite surprising to see such a fellow at the simulator level. Yuan Fei sized Luo Nan up with a few glances. Luo Nan's powerful posture made the young man feel very uncomfortable. He changed his crouching posture and stood up. Yuan Fei's eyes were clear and bright. He was very arrogant at such a young age. But to be able to enter the simulator level, Xia City had unearthed yet another talented person. Clang! An abrupt sound rang out. It was exceptionally clear in the quiet atmosphere. The gazes of the three people shifted to that side for a moment. They saw a piece of rubble tumble down from the rubble. Luo Nan looked stupidly at his own palm. Did it slip again? No. The feeling this time was much clearer than last time. That piece of rubble had fallen from the palm he had just condensed. It had pierced through his palm and the back of his hand. He subconsciously moved his fingers and examined them over and over again. Finally, he confirmed that his seemingly materialized palm seemed to be condensed from clouds. It was severely lacking in density, lacking in bearing capacity. It could only hold the weight of a piece of rubble for a moment. A slight distraction would cause the palm to dissipate. So it was like this. Yuan Fei shook his head and turned to He Yuan. Miss He, the structure of the logic world has indeed become more and more complex after merging with the psychic wave network. We need to increase the maintenance power of technicians. But there's no need to spoil things through excessive enthusiasm. I think this child is quite good for being able to realize high-level applications of the psychic wave network at such a young age. But there's no meaning in forcefully entering the fourth level. Luo Nan was very unhappy to hear these words. What does she mean by forcefully entering? How am I forcefully entering? Just as Luo Nan was about to speak, a full-length mirror materialized out of thin air and stood by his side. It was not He Yuan's handiwork, but Yuan Fei's. You're Xiao Luo, right? Keep squeezing. It's going to fall apart. Luo Nan turned his head to look and was given a fright. It was unknown when, but his face had become swollen and swollen. His facial features were even a bit out of place. He looked ugly and ridiculous. Sunlight sprinkled down as he spoke, and part of the light even penetrated through his body. He did not look like a normal person, no matter how one looked at him. The ability to interfere with the material plane is insufficient. It would have been fine if it was the old version, but the new version has greatly increased the effectiveness of interference power. It's like the increased pressure in the depths of water. If the structural strength is insufficient, it will lead to disintegration. Yuan Fei had one hand in his pocket. It was as if he was sizing up a very interesting toy. He even extended his hand and gestured a few times outside of Luo Nan's body. He turned his head to speak to He Yuan. It looks like the new version has increased the entry threshold. It will be very strenuous for Xia City. Miss He, can you suggest to President Ouyang to let go of technical maintenance and let his colleagues from the other branches share the pressure? He Yuan's brows furrowed slightly. The psychic wave network has been open sourced for a long time. Technical maintenance is also carried out in Bloodrock Town. I'm talking about the basic structure. Yuan Fei shot a glance at Luo Nan and smirked. Upgrading just like that. It's not just the children of Xia City that are troubled. Luo Nan looked at his increasingly inhuman reflection in the mirror. He tried to straighten it out, but the feeling was completely different from before he entered the wilderness. He felt a clear feeling of stagnation. When his telepathic thoughts cut in, it was as if he had bumped into glue. It was extremely strenuous to control. The more he tried to control it, the more serious the situation of his body's structural spillage became. In the end, his body completely collapsed into a mist, returning to its original state. Chapter 278. Naturally, the practical lessons in the simulator could not continue. He Yuan dealt with Yuan Fei in a simple manner before leading Luo Nan out of the psychic wave network to return to the plane of reality. Luo Nan opened his eyes, but all he saw was pitch-black darkness. A specially modified sealed helmet was already covering his head. It was just that the immersive guidance had yet to be activated. He just stared at this darkness, his thoughts flowing. Yuan Fei, who came from the incident investigation team at headquarters, had just arrived in Xia City. He didn't understand the situation. He saw that Luo Nan was young, yet Luo Nan had entered the fourth level of communication and tried to operate the simulator. He felt that failure was normal and that success was abnormal. He just laughed it off and didn't think about it at all. But Luo Nan was well aware of the situation of his body and soul being unbalanced. He also had enough of the pain of the uncontrollable growth of his soul strength. Suddenly, the problem of low interference power appeared. Anyone would stare blankly for a period of time when faced with such a contradictory phenomenon. He didn't have to ponder for too long before by Xinyan's surprisingly gentle voice transmitted over. How does it feel to be in an out-of-body state on the psychic wave network? Luo Nan was still tangled in the problem of interference power. He wasn't in the mood to respond, and he ignored the key elements in her words. Bai Xinyan took it as a tacit agreement. She seemed to sigh and laugh. Only that seemingly open-minded but actually old-fashioned muddle-headed dad of mine thinks that you only have the ability to send your soul. His face has been beaten swollen these past 2 days. He doesn't dare to come out and meet people. Only now did Luo Nen realize what Bai Xinyan was talking about. So it turned out that the misunderstanding of his out-of-body state being treated as a sense soul had already been corrected. Mr. Bai really hadn't appeared these past few days. He Yuan had told him that she had invited him to teach, but he had been tactfully declined. As for the reason behind this, everyone was clear in their hearts. Even though Luo Nan was a factor, it was only a negligible amount. Luo Nan was disinclined to get involved in the conflict between his father and daughter. But then again, a woman who could make such a good-natured old man refuse to forgive her would only make him more vigilant. He was silent for far too long. Bai Xinyan misunderstood his thoughts. You aren't the only young man who hides his head and shows his tail. There's nothing to be embarrassed about. It's just that it's a bit reckless to act like this to a doctor. Hello, sister. I'm chatting with your boss right now. Oh. He Wayne had sent a message to Bai Xinyan, but only to Bai Xinyan. After the latter uttered a rather clear question, he also fell silent. Several seconds later, the inner layer of the sealed helmet lit up without any warning. The guidance process targeted at ability users began. Bai Xinyan's last words came, "Tonight's homework is starting. I hope you won't be lazy." Hey, Luonin didn't want to talk to Bai Xinyan before, but now he couldn't help but speak. Even an idiot would know that the problem he, Wayne, and Bai Xinyan were discussing must have something to do with his lack of interference power. He was the person involved. Why should he be excluded? This was a hospital, and he felt like he was diagnosed with a terminal illness. The whole world knew that he was going to die, but he was the only one who was kept in the dark. Wait a minute, the pessimistic attitude of the two in the private conversation last time, wasn't that what was going on? Luo Nan forgot to accept the guidance for a time. He stared blankly once more. At this time, even with the external neuron protecting his body and the void depository as a buffer, he couldn't stop his chaotic emotions. The next day, Luo Nan's mind was completely outside of the school curriculum. The symptoms of low interference power and the corresponding ominous omens had been plaguing him since last night. According to what he knew, he, Wayne, and Bai Xinyan had engaged in a long discussion after the incident, but in the end, they were unable to come up with a definite answer. Correspondingly, his altered schedule was facing a second major overhaul. Luo Nin could only wait for news before the revisions were completed. Most of the day passed in a muddle, but Luo Nin didn't receive a new schedule. Club activities began in the middle of the afternoon, and the other students got busy. Even Xie Junping, who had been accompanying him for the past 2 days, had a meeting to attend in the student council. Only Luo Nan was alive in the order club. He wasn't in the mood, so he didn't have any activities. Luo Nan was in a really bad mood. He arrived at the tree house in the withered tree sandbar. He sat in the lounge, staring at the weak light in a daze. At first, he seriously pondered over the problem of interference power, but his train of thought was battered and bruised by one knowledge obstacle after another. And there were far too many special circumstances that could only appear in formatting theory. He couldn't find anyone even if he wanted to ask. In the end, his mood only worsened. He did a rough self-analysis in this helpless situation, trying to dispel these negative emotions on his own. Luo Nan had to admit that when Wayne mentioned that there were only 800 daily users in the entire world on the simulator level, he couldn't help but feel a bit of superiority in addition to being nervous. But right now, these emotions, which had just sprouted a bit, were directly cut off. He couldn't find any other emotions to fill the void for a time, so a feeling of emptiness and disappointment naturally grew. But this wasn't just a change in status or the like. It involved a more fundamental problem. The question that had suddenly appeared a few days ago, without an answer, was like the impending night. It caused endless shadows to silently creep over him. Luo Nan was alone within the shadows. He didn't have any point of support. Only the layer upon layer of chaotic emotions entangled him, forcing him to ask himself once more, did his grandfather's formatting theory really have flaws that were hard to resolve? For example, the uncontrollable growth of soul strength? For example, the lack of interference power towards the material plane? Was there anything else besides these 2 points? Was there an end? Luo Nen leaned against the inner wall of the tree hole. Practically all of his energy was being devoured by these cruel questions. He was in a trance, unaware of the passage of time. This lasted until his ear vibrated slightly. Someone was contacting him through the hexa ear. He was a bit surprised when he saw the name of the contact person. "Hello, Boss Luo. Are you free right now?" Luo Nen rushed out from the treehouse. He passed through the underwater passageway and high-speed elevator to arrive at the main entrance of Gear. Not long after he arrived, a young man in his 30s arrived along the small path outside the building. It was currently late autumn. The jungle and wetlands were densely interwoven with vegetation, blocking out the sunlight early on. It was much darker than the outside world. The newcomer had deep footsteps and shallow footsteps. He walked quite arduously. When he walked into the area illuminated by the lights in front of Gear, he grinned. Beads of sweat had already appeared on his slightly plump face. "Boss Luo, this place of yours wasn't easy to find. This place is pretty good." Chapter 279. The person who came was none other than the mentally enhanced Papercut, who fought shoulder to shoulder with Luo Nen on the night of the incident at Frost River Reality. Frankly speaking, this old man's appearance was far too ordinary. Luo Nen nearly didn't recognize him when they met again. Fortunately, Luo Nen still remembered this awakened. This awakened had a slightly bloated body, as well as that amiable smiling face. Even if Luo Nen didn't receive this treatment most of the time, Papercut's opinion of Luo Nen was mainly that his immature attitude had harmed the team. However, various facts later proved that Luo Nen was correct, so there was no need for this opinion to exist. To call me Papercut, it feels weird to add Mr. to my nickname. Papercut grinned out of habit. "Then don't call me Boss Luo. Boss Luo is your nickname, right?" Papercut's smile was very infectious. "I know that you have quite a few nicknames, but I won't change it. Everything goes according to the flow of the tongue." Luo Nen was a bit embarrassed. Papercut waved his hand before Luo Nen could say anything. "Okay, don't get tangled up in these minor details. I came to teach today. I'm sorry. Something happened at the last minute, so I pushed the time forward." Luo Nen responded politely. "I'm the one troubling you." He invited Papercut into the building as he spoke. Papercut was one of Luo Nen's teachers for general knowledge training. He was responsible for imparting the practical course, Soul Strength Activation Techniques. Papercut emphasized when talking about the course, "This course is actually quite late. The reason why it was brought forward, it's because of my special circumstances. My interference power is low. Do I need to do a field experiment to verify it?" Papercut was stunned. He turned to look at Luo Nen with a bit of helplessness. "Boss Luo, you're still young. You think too much." Luo Nen blinked. "Am I wrong?" "You really are." Luo Nen couldn't be blamed for thinking too much. The introduction of this course in his old schedule clearly stated that it was a practical course on mental interference with matter. Now that there was a problem with his interference power, Papercut still deliberately brought up the course. The reason for this was very clear. Could this be considered a re-examination of a terminal illness? That being said, Papercut's course itself was quite interesting. With such a nickname, Papercut's specialty was to use a special method to cut out paper tools and use soul force to endow them with all sorts of functions. Papercut had revealed his hand to Luo Nen in the tea room on the 3rd floor of Gear. He manipulated a small paper doll and performed a comical pantomime. Then, he performed a set of military boxing on the table. His movements were agile and lifelike, as if he really had a life of his own. The little paperman's strength was also quite impressive. The teacups on the table were kicked all over the place. In the end, he even practiced stone lock, throwing the teacups up and down as if he was a street performer. Even though Luo Nen's mind was in a mess, he couldn't help but laugh when he saw the mini paperman's strenuous performance. His mood unwittingly turned for the better. This is the most basic application. After that, it is further divided into activation style and manipulation style. The former focused on simulating spirituality, while the latter focused on precise manipulation. I'm an animation type, so I'm more casual and often do some auxiliary work. I've seen your information. You're a precision type, spiritual enhanced, and your pure observational abilities are so capricious. It's very likely that you're talented in precise manipulation. Papercut began to paint a beautiful future for Luo Nan. The society has combat machines specifically manufactured for the control class. Actually, every control class should be an extremely powerful engineer. They can fight and repair. They are powerful and safe. Luo Nan's eyes drooped and he laughed. In order to do this, he first had to satisfy the basic requirements of interference power. If soul strength was unable to effectively interfere with the material plane, then everything else was meaningless. Speaking of repairs, however, he suddenly thought of the Tai Chi ball of divine Yujim. The core component of the Tai Chi ball seemed to be a precise machine. Luo Nan had heard Shuai mention it, but in the end, it hadn't been repaired. It was still tossed in the Daowan. This matter needed to be handled properly. The maintenance engineers of society were certainly a level stronger than those outside. Luo Nan's mind was a bit scattered, but he quickly recovered. He concentrated on listening to Papercut's lecture. Today, whether it was training, teaching, or symptom review, Papercut only taught elementary subjects. He taught the basic techniques of soul strength acting on materials. Papercut chose a special kind of talisman paper for his practice. It was said that it was obtained from another psychic of the society, Mr. Gao, whom Luo Nan had yet to meet. It was made from specially cultivated peach wood and bamboo pulp. The ratio was extremely meticulous, and it was one of the materials most suited to converge with soul strength. As for Papercut himself, he had a meticulous and patient personality. From a very beginning, he began to manually operate the talisman. He broke down the steps and explained the few special points of force for the soul strength to be used clearly. From the principles to the operation, everything was extremely clear. Logically speaking, the difficulty shouldn't be high with such thorough preparations. However, the development of the situation simply followed the most pessimistic predictions. Luo Nan's learning process didn't go smoothly. It was already 6 o'clock in the evening. Luo Nan and Papercut held their breaths and focused their minds under the illumination of the lights in the tea room. They stared at the crude paper man on the table. This little thing, which had just been cut, stood up shakily, taking steps with great difficulty. 1 step, 2 steps, 3 steps. Then it fell to the ground, unable to get up again. Oh no! Luo Nan slapped the table with both hands, bringing about a gentle breeze that lifted the paper man up. Then there was a stream of air that Luo Nan exhaled with a long sigh. The little thing fluttered under the table. This series of movements was much more nimble than its previous struggling appearance. Luo Nan knew that he had lost control of himself. He hurriedly said, "Sorry," and got up, wanting to pick up the paper man. Papercut held him down. With a thought, the small paper man, 5 meters away, immediately came to life. It was like a ruffian monkey. It leaped and hopped, climbing the table leg, and charged onto the table in a few steps. Luo Nan felt more and more ashamed when he compared the two. He laughed bitterly and sat back on the chair. He looked up into the sky and stared blankly. This doesn't make sense. Papercut scratched his head endlessly, but he couldn't figure out no matter how hard he tried. His patience hadn't run out yet, so he pulled Luo Nan and said, "How about we sort it out a bit more and start from the beginning?" Luo Nan had no reason to give up when faced with such a teacher. He forced himself to raise his spirits and grabbed the small paper man on the table. His fingertips tapped across the paper man's head and torso in succession. There are a total of 4 soul strength focus points. They form 6 basic resonance lines to realize basic control. Luo Nan paused a bit upon speaking up to this point. He then said, "This is actually a kind of irregular deformation of a prism. It belongs to the structural changes in the operation of energy and information. The paper man is just a medium. The basic prism structure is the support. You chose to start with this structure. Is it because it's a bit similar to my format pyramid?" Chapter 280. Luo Nan calmed down. He fiddled with the small paper man between his fingers, then tossed it back onto the table a few seconds later. This is because the prismatic structure requires a certain amount of strength. If the strength you gave me was equivalent to a steel structure, then what I gave me would be a spider web at most. Strength. It's strength. That's right. Papercut was helpless. Of course, he knew that the crux of the problem was the strength of the structure. If he were to investigate further, it would be the problem of the interference of the mental plane with the material plane. But these were all superficial phenomena. Who could tell him that a mentally enhanced user with superb mental senses, who could send his soul out of his body as if it were nothing, and whose mental cultivation had nearly reached the B-rank standard, couldn't even do the most basic thing of controlling objects with his mind? What was going on? In the end, there was no answer to this question. Not only was Papercut unable to get any results, but Bai Xinyan, who knew about this long ago, kept it a secret when Luo Nan went to the hospital for treatment. She didn't give Luo Nan any information that could be used as a reference. Luo Nan originally wanted to ask Yuan, but after some thought, he gave up on this thought for the time being. Problems on the mental plane were largely self-perception. If even he couldn't figure out what was going on, then it was impossible to count on others. The terrible state of affairs undoubtedly affected Luo Nan's mood. The following training sessions at the Frost River Waterway were simply disastrous. The quality was extremely terrible. The amount of time Luo Nan could last was even less than in the morning. Compared to last night, his endurance had dropped by 20%. Luo Nan saw the relevant results and made preparations for additional training. However, Bai Xinyan didn't express anything. She let him pass the final moments of his time in the healing pod in peace. I still have to learn new things tonight. It's best if I take a nap and relax. All right, don't be late. Bai Xinyan made medical records as she waved her hand to let Luo Nan leave. In the past, Luo Nan would probably rejoice, but now he thought about it a bit more. Was this attitude a part of happy, fast healing? Sure enough, when a person is about to die, nothing is taboo. Luo Nan thought about the results of his peeping from 2 days ago, and his mood turned even worse. He really wanted to crack open Bai Xinyan's skull and figure out just what kind of state he was in her eyes. Or perhaps he wanted to peep again. The problem was, how could he have such an opportunity every day? Luo Nan left Renai Hospital with his mind in a jumbled mess. Tonight, he had already made an appointment to go to Basan Manor to learn breathing techniques from Home Master Xiao. Last time he went to the Daoguan, Luo Nan had the Phantom flying car as a means of transportation. He had already returned the flying car to Siet Junping this morning. Right now, he was riding a low-altitude public transport, rushing towards the Riverwu district under the curtain of night. The first thing Luo Nan did after getting into the car was give Zan a call. He informed her that he would be staying at the Daoguan tonight. In fact, he had already used Shui Lei's tiger skin to ask for leave from his aunt yesterday to confirm the situation of not returning at night. But he knew his aunt's temperament very well. Right now, he had to make another phone call to comfort her. Otherwise, according to Madame Luo Shuqing, she would have personally brought him to pay a visit to Gym Master Xiao for his first official lesson. By the time he finally ended the call, they were already halfway through the journey. At this hour, the bus was no longer as crowded as it was during the day. There were only a dozen or so people on the bus. They were all groggy or playing games with their wristbands. Luo Nan sat at the back. He lowered his head and fiddled with his things. However, he was different from the others. He wasn't fiddling with an electronic device in his hand. Instead, he was fiddling with a thin greenish-yellow paper. This was a special talisman paper that Papercut had given him. It was personally made by the psychic Mr. Gao. The special material was more suitable for the transmission of energy and information. In the hands of a true expert, this talisman paper could be used to deal with enemies. It was a bit extravagant to use it for practice, but it would be fine if he could really get some ideas out of it. Luo Nan followed the technique Papercut taught him. He slowly operated and tore the talisman paper into a palm-sized paper man. The incorporeal prismatic structure took shape as a whole. At the same time, abundant soul strength poured down, completely submerging the paper man. Luo Nan could sense the texture of the paper, the rough edges of the torn paper, the crisscrossing creases. Not a single detail could be hidden from him. But under the effect of soul strength, The paper man in his palm merely rolled around in a half-dead state. It then became motionless. His soul strength nearly crushed his body. It seemed to have no practical significance on the paper man. It's still like this. Why? Back at Frost River Reality, his support for Shue Weluin and the other special police officers was no problem at all. The effects of controlling the Wraith sign, influencing Cat Eyes, and even his own mental attack were real. But why couldn't it work when it truly fell on materials? Luo Nin looked out the window. The colorful night curtain of the metropolis was like fluttering cotton. It was empty and hard to see the real thing. His mind naturally extended out, passing through the deep void and flowing within the sea of lights of the metropolis. His perception became more real. Within the clairvoyance of his perception, there were tens of thousands of living beings, the convergence of stars, and the meandering Milky Way. There were marvelous layers within, majestic and hazy. It was like a grand world, gorgeous and magnificent. But when such a grand structure of the Star River was cast onto the small paper man, not even a ripple was stirred up. The prismatic structure was still as strong as a spider web. He couldn't even feel any connection between the two. An incorporeal and ice-cold barrier separated his consciousness from the real thing. They were infinitely close, but they had never truly fused. It was like a dream and reality. Could it be that this power was all fabricated? Could it be that the crazy ravings of his grandfather only existed on the plane of imagination? No, this didn't make sense. The beam of light from Luo Nan's consciousness cut through the Star River. It definitely wasn't limited to a radius of 1 or 2 kilometers. There were many fulcrum points within the enormous metropolis. There were normal people, awakened ones, ablatum knights, crows, darksider races. They were real, giving him feedback at all times. How could this kind of perception be a dream? Luo Nan arrived at the Divine Yu Gym above Basan Building in a daze. It was already 9 o'clock in the evening. The students of the Dawan had long since dispersed. Only Shuel Lei remained here. He came out early to welcome Luo Nan. Nanster, the gym master, is waiting for you inside. Luo Nan suppressed his chaotic state of mind. He was a bit embarrassed. I'm late. Not all. It's mainly because the Dawan doesn't accept new business. We finished our business at 8 o'clock. You're actually quite early. It's mainly because you're just getting started. You'll need some time. Relax. I'll be your protector tonight. Shuelei pulled Luo Nin inside. The lights in the front and middle courtyards of the Dawan had already been turned off. It was late in the autumn night. Luo Nin walked along the winding corridor. Luckily, Shuelei's voice was loud. It diluted this feeling quite a bit. Luo Nin was quite baffled. You're spending the night at the Dawan as well? Of course. I've always been the gym master's assistant. Yes, I'm also an interpreter. Huh. Luo Nan and Shuelei had already entered the backyard in the blink of an eye. The light of the humanoid stone lanterns illuminated the front courtyard. Light and shadow separated like an exquisite oil painting. Chapter 281. Luo Nan and Shuelei walked into the room. There were no lights on inside. The lights from outside only illuminated the entrance. Most of the other areas were filled with shadows, making it hard to see clearly. Shuelei turned his head to look for Xiao Xinyu. Luo Nin relied on the advantage of his mental senses to lock onto Xiao Xinyu's position a step earlier. Xiao Xinyu was sitting on the cork floor, leaning against the wall on one side of the corridor. His left leg was crossed, and his right leg was upright. His sitting posture was casual. Not far away from him was the Tai Chi ball. He didn't know if it was because of the environment, but the current Xiao Xinyu was silent, almost gloomy. He did not react to the two young men who came in. Dojo Master, Nanster is here. Shuelei finally saw where Xiao Xinyu was. He walked over and whispered. Xiao Xinyu grunted. Then let's begin. Her straightforward and direct attitude made Luo Nan and Shuelei a bit stupefied. No matter what the two youngsters thought, Xiao Xinyu simply got up from the floor and walked to Luo Nan's side. His figure was tall and thin. He was a head taller than Luo Nan, who had yet to fully develop. He gave off quite a bit of pressure when he stood. The time I requested is from 11 p.m. to 5 a.m., a total of 6 hours. Ideally, 6 hours a day would be enough for the first stage of learning. I asked you to come a little earlier today so that I can teach you basic techniques and also do some tests to get a feel for you. Luo Nin obediently complied. Although this gym master Xiao did not engage in any pleasantries or opening remarks, going straight to the main topic rather strangely, his words were still logical and clear. It was unknown where Shuai Lei's so-called translation came from. Luo Nin immediately complied with Xiao Xinyu's request. He lay flat on the sleeping mat that had already been prepared. Shuai Lei, on the other hand, lit a pot of incense in a very exaggerated manner, saying that it had the effect of helping people relax. The light was dim, and the fragrance lingered in the air. In such an environment, it was not difficult to relax. Luo Nan's eyes narrowed slightly. He slowly adjusted his breathing and soon entered state. At this time, Xiao Xinyu suddenly asked, "Have you learned other breathing techniques before?" "Yes, there is." Luo Nin had been practicing the chanting breathing technique since he was young. The majority of its functions were in visualization, but he also started with breathing. Also, he had obtained an extremely good demonstration from this inconceivable little girl, Rui 1, some time ago. She had comprehended the rhythm of soul breathing. Cough, soul breathing is also considered breathing, right? Luo Nin believed that he had some experience. Xiao Xinyu continued to ask, "Have you entered meditation?" "You mean the stationary state?" "Yes." At the side, Shuai Lei said happily, "That's good. You already have a very good foundation. You'll definitely improve at lightning speed." Xiao Xinyu glanced at Shuai Lei, but did not say anything. He just let Luo Nan continue to relax. At the same time, Xiao Xinyu began to explain to Luo Nan the essentials of adjusting his breathing. In the beginning, Luo Nan only spoke in general terms. But under this sort of atmosphere, Luo Nan subconsciously and unconsciously followed the methods he had described. He carried out experiments. Xiao Xinyu probably had an accurate grasp of Luo Nan's state. He suddenly changed the way he spoke. He was shorter, directly touching on the deviation that occurred during Luo Nan's attempts, and he corrected it. Sometimes, she would directly reach out and press on Luo Nan's body. She wanted Luo Nan's breathing and thoughts to be mobilized and concentrated in these areas. In the beginning, the taste of having someone controlling his breathing was unpleasant. Luo Nan controlled his breathing as he split his attention to receive guidance. His nerves were taut, and there was no way he could relax at all. But Luo Nan had a foundation in the end. He soon discovered that many of the essentials Xiao Xinyu imparted to him happened to coincide with his current understanding. It gave him quite a bit of foresight when it came to certain details, and the specific control of his breathing became more unhurried. Moreover, Xiao Xinyu's teachings were not harsh on the details. It was like a faintly discernible lamp that led Luo Nin in front of him so that he would not get lost. Luo Nin still followed Luo Nan's own habits and actions. It didn't take long for Luo Nan to adapt. His mind settled down. He controlled the intensity of his breathing, making it faintly discernible between his mouth and nose. His mind first resided in his mouth and nose. Then it moved to his throat, chest, lower abdomen, tailbone, and so on. He also visualized in reverse, changing back and forth. In the end, his breath became continuous. It was impossible to distinguish the direction, and it gradually enshrouded his entire body. Luo Nan's body became slightly hot under this marvelous feeling. It was as if he was wrapped in a warm cloud. It was similar to a sauna, but it was not that stuffy. It was rather transparent. In the end, Luo Nan's energy was completely focused on sensing the changes. He naturally blocked out Xiao Xinyu's whispers. In the end, even his body's senses became fuzzy. It was as if Luo Nan had transformed into a cloud, drifting in the void. The cloud chi expanded and contracted, showing the difference between inside and outside. But when it came down to it, it was a rhythm of entering and exiting. That's right, it was a bit like Rui 1. Her breath resonated at the pinnacle of perfection, and her body and soul were blended together. Luo Nen suddenly opened his eyes as if he had awoken from a dream. Shuai followed Xiao Xinyu's instructions and checked the time on his wristband. 5 minutes and 20 seconds. Shuai smiled. From the time you lay down until now, it's been a total of 320 seconds. Luo Nen was stunned. That's short. He thought that time had passed very quickly, at least an hour or two, but he didn't expect it to be so short. If one only counted the time when he was fully engrossed, it would be less than a minute. Xiao Xinyu glanced at Shuai's wristband. 7 seconds. 7 seconds. Spirit galloping, heart illuminating the 8 extremities. 7 seconds isn't bad, but it's not short either. Luo Nen didn't understand at all. Translator Shui finally appeared at this time. He praised, "Sure enough, there is a foundation. The meditative state you just entered is actually a process of body self-examination. It's like turning on a device, reading and loading. The faster your brain, the higher the efficiency. 7 seconds of inner vision, obtaining the edict of void and stillness, is quite amazing." Gym Master Xiao declined to comment on Shuai's words. You can't rely on the void. You can't stay full for long. Remember that breathing rhythm. We will proceed to the next step. Though it was hard to understand, it really did seem quite amazing. Luo Nen couldn't help but have a different kind of confidence in Xiao Xinyu's teachings. He recalled the feeling from before and nodded solemnly. 2 minutes later, Luo Nen entered the strange state of his body's invisibility once more under Xiao Xinyu's guidance. His body was like a cloud. Warm heat was constantly accumulating, but the rhythm of entering and exiting was there. It expanded and contracted all the time. The heat was not static, but it flowed endlessly. Luo Nen couldn't see it clearly at first, but after familiarizing himself with it, his senses grew sharper. Slowly, he was able to perceive substance within the invisibility of the cloud. According to Xiao Xinyu's theory, meditative state was just the initial stage of cognition. Cultivation required one to eliminate the established concept of the body, using the feeling of a meditative state to reconstruct it. This wasn't to let one's imagination run wild in the mind. The body was still the body, and the aura was still the aura. One just needed to take a complete form. Luo Nen was familiar with this method. Wasn't this his method of drawing simple sketches? He didn't care about the fineness of the form. He focused on the charm and characteristics. However, Xiao Xinyu gave him a clear image. Chapter 282. His body was a mountain that was densely planted with thick soil. It could bear the weight of sunlight, rain, and dew, as well as resist storms and lightning. She was like flowing water, meandering and flowing. It could accumulate the spiritual beauty of a mountain and give life to all living things. Here, the body was the foundation, the most important. It determined the structure of matter, just like a mountain. There were always ups and downs. Vital qi was a function determined by the body's foundation. It was like the flow of water, following the shape of a mountain, showing the warmth and coldness of yin and yang. The two of them referenced each other. As the state of concentration deepened, the minute details gradually became clearer. The distinction between illusion and reality was made, and some of it appeared. It was as if a painting of mountains and rivers had unfolded before Luo Nan's eyes. Clear streams meandered within the unbroken mountain terrain, following the flow. Everywhere it passed, there were some places that could stay, some places that could move, and some places that could be used were the complete opposite. With the difference, the feeling of substance was even clearer. Gradually, there were some places where the energy was circulating and accumulating like a calm lake or deep pool, dark whirlpools forming. This was the so-called aperture point that Xiao Xinyu wanted him to pay special attention to. It was a place where spiritual energy was stored and nurtured. Luo Nan's consciousness gradually confirmed his position. He even compared it with the established concept of his body. The top of his head, his chest, his lower abdomen, as well as the palms of his hands and the soles of his feet. These acupoints seemed to resonate with each other, causing ripples to appear. The shock wave sliced through, and the cloud-like illusory feeling gradually retreated. His body's perception reappeared, but compared to before, he already had a completely new understanding. Just like that old philosophical proposition, seeing a mountain is a mountain, seeing water is water. Seeing a mountain is not a mountain, seeing water is not water. Seeing a mountain is still a mountain, seeing water is still water. Luo Nan's mind was muddled when he heard Xiao Xinyu speak of these things. But now that he truly encountered them, he felt that he understood them quite well. However, Xiao Xinyu had only mentioned this step. He did not explicitly state what to do next. Luo Nan's thoughts were a bit scattered. Originally, he wanted to leave the fixed space and ask Xiao Xinyu about the trick to the next step. However, the resonating pattern between his acupuncture points and his body made him think of Rui Wen's marvelous technique of body and soul merging. However, after experiencing it in detail, it was still different. Luo Nan was far from reaching Rui Wen's realm of mixing and merging as one. The resonance within his body only occurred between a few acupuncture points. With the acupoints as the ends, they were connected to each other, forming a blurry structure. It was a little chaotic, a little complicated, and also a little familiar. If he made some slight adjustments, Luo Nan's body still felt a bit fuzzy right now, so he subconsciously viewed it as a correctable drawing. He moved the endpoints, merged the lines, and made a few adjustments. The fuzzy and chaotic structure became orderly, turning into a pyramid-like structure of vertebral bodies. Luo Nan suddenly felt that something was off. He wanted to open his eyes, but a shout came from the outside world at this time. "Continue." The voice was deep, and it suppressed Luo Nan's surging mind. Luo Nan's mind swayed a few times, but in the end, he maintained his fixed state. At this moment, the image of mountains and rivers had become blurry and empty, replaced by a more familiar scene. A pyramid rotated in the void. To be precise, it was the format pyramid of visualization diagram. The sudden change in imagery caused Luo Nan to be a bit perplexed. His senses were also affected and became chaotic. But this situation didn't persist for too long. The visualization diagram rotated in his fixed state, and all the chaotic information was collected within. It was orderly and orderly, as if there was a central axis. The bones, muscles, and even the trillions of blood vessels and fibers of his entire body moved. A single movement led to 100 movements, 1,000 movements, and 10,000 movements. There was no chaos at all. Luo Nan was no stranger to this feeling. He had been guided by the archetype format in the complete version of the Frost River Waterway system some time ago at Frost River Reality. He ignited the virtual format of fire, using it as an axis and many aspects linked together. The image of mountains and rivers and the format of fire were very good, but they couldn't compare to the significance of the visualization diagram for Luo Nan. Luo Nan had already gotten used to coexisting with the visualization diagram over the past 5 years. The visualization diagram represented formatting theory, and it was the truth that he revered. Therefore, the visualization diagram occupied the most central position without a doubt when it came out. The other sensations either revolved around the visualization diagram, fluctuating and fluctuating, or they were simply annihilated. Luckily, Luo Nan still remembered what he came here for tonight. Though his direction was a bit off, the roots of his breathing were still there. His breathing rhythm was only messed up for a moment before it returned to normal. Though the image of mountains and rivers was already blurry and indistinct, the feeling of the circulation and accumulation of vital energy was still there. It was just that the natural charm that followed the flow of energy within the closed visualization diagram was gone. There were only layers of steaming hot air that accumulated endlessly, heading toward the inscribed sphere in the central region of the visualization diagram. In Luo Nan's visualization mode, if he only cared about himself, the inscribed sphere would contain his internal organs and the circulation of blood and energy. And according to Xiao Xinyu's teachings, vital energy symbolized the activation of bodily functions. What would it look like to gather vital energy like this? Xiao did not explain. The visualization diagram rotated endlessly, and at the same time, layer after layer of vital energy surged inside. The momentum was vast, and there seemed to be some changes. But there were no changes. The inscribed sphere was empty. It was like a black hole. No matter how much vital energy and heat accumulated, it was devoured by this emptiness. There was no end to it. Luonan's mind followed the circulation of vital energy and entered the inscribed sphere. This was the first time he had learned formatting theory. Moreover, it was natural. Clearly, he had made great progress in the field of visualization. This should have been a good thing, but the scene of his inner vision caused Luonan's mind to stiffen. He was flooded with that dark color that he could not tell was real or illusory. It was hard for him to feel anything else. Luonan's current state of mind was absolutely not suitable for meditating. But the shout from outside suppressed the great waves that could make him leave his meditative state. It also firmly pressed him in this space, allowing him to see things more clearly. Walala! Walala! Countless thick chains penetrated a dark color within the depths of the space. They crisscrossed and intertwined with each other, forming a complex structure that made one's scalp go numb. It was like an inescapable net. It was like a black prison. Yes, the inscribed sphere of the visualization diagram was also where the heavily chained crow came from. But Luonan never imagined that the seemingly endless chain that could penetrate through the layers of the void would actually have this sort of appearance, this sort of form, hidden deep within the visualization diagram. Faced with such a deep space, the surging vital energy that he had felt before was simply insignificant smoke. Wisps of energy curled up in spirals, and under the enormous internal pressure, the vital energy sank deep into the depths. There was a bit of fiery light in the depths where the chains interweaved. It seeped through the gaps of the chains, but Luonan's mind could not feel any heat. The cold chains sucked away all the heat halfway, leaving only the flickering fiery light that hooked a bit of his mind. It was faintly discernible. My heart is a prison. Suddenly, Luonan thought of the first phrase of the 16 words formula. The crashing vibrations rang out once more, and Luonan's mind was finally unable to control itself. It was sent out of his meditative state. Chapter 283. Sit up? Yes, he had sat up, and he was even sitting in the pyramid posture, completely ignoring the mountain and river imagery that Xiao had taught him. Luonan gaped, speechless. On the other hand, Xiao was not all that surprised. He looked Luonan up and down a few times, then slowly said, breathing in and out, "Fusing new and old techniques into a furnace is a good thing." Shuelei let out a sigh of relief. "That's good." Unexpectedly, Xiao next words were, "It's a pity that I can't use my skills on myself." Ah, Shuelei blinked. "Dojo master, I can't translate what you're saying." He looked at Luonan. Luonan's head was lowered in contemplation. He didn't react at all. In the end, he could only ask, "Master, you mean?" Xiao didn't respond to Shuelei. He gazed at Luonan for some time before saying, "I taught you to visualize the image of mountains and rivers, but I didn't tell you to take out an iceberg. The weather is cold and the ground is frozen. When water swims through the cracks in the ice, most of it will still melt. Water can moisturize things, but ice can crush people." Luonan pondered for a moment. He raised his head and said, "Please guide me, Gym Master." Shuelei looked at the Gym Master, then looked at Luonan. He finally confirmed that he, the translator, was about to lose his job. He shrunk to the side, not uttering a word. He just pricked up his ears. Xiao pondered as he said, "Rome wasn't built in a single day. I don't really understand your visualization technique, but I vaguely feel that from the inside to the outside, it's very strict and majestic. It's a magnificent sight. This is, of course, very good. It's a pity that this iceberg doesn't truly belong to you. The more majestic the iceberg is, the smaller you are. People are affected by the law, and the law is affected by people. This is your problem. This dojo master Shio had never been good with words. When he conversed with others, he would always say what he was thinking. His reasoning was not very clear, and he often used metaphors, making it hard for others to listen. Shuelei's eyes spun as he listened to Luo Nan. Luckily, Luo Nan combined his own circumstances with the heavily intersecting dark chains and the prison in his heart. He had a general understanding of what was going on. It was precisely because he understood what Xiao Xinyu said that he was truly amazed by Xiao Xinyu's eyesight. This dojo master was undoubtedly truly capable, but he was also more and more confused about the underlying causes of his family situation. A while passed before Luo Nan asked, "Why doesn't it belong to me? I'm the one cultivating it. Is it really you?" Xiao Xinyu's rhetorical question left Luo Nan speechless. From the first day, he started researching formatting theory. He had been walking a path that relied on external forces. The spiritual medicine, the dark-sider life form, the sacrificial framework. These external items had played a decisive role behind the rapid growth of his soul strength. All he did was set up a shelf. Even his arrogance was learned from his grandfather. While Luo Nan was in a daze, Xiao Xinyu slowly stood up and walked to the side of the Tai Chi ball. There was no light in the room. From a distance, only a blurry figure could be seen. Luo Nan and Shuelei glanced at each other. They both got up and walked over. Xiao Xinyu didn't care about them. He directly moved the Tai Chi ball, causing it to spin in the bowl tray on the ground. The metal ball, which was half the height of a person and weighed more than 100 kilograms, spun with great momentum. Even the cork floor was shaking. "This is an iceberg." Luo Nan nodded. He automatically replaced iceberg with formatting theory in his mind. "Now you have this." Xiao Xinyu continued to speak. He pointed at the tray below. Due to the spinning heavy metal ball, the tray below swayed endlessly as well. Luo Nan stared at it without blinking. He took the tray and compared it to his own situation. This analogy was very intuitive. Even the ignorant Shuelei understood. "Gym Master, are you saying that Nanster's cultivation speed is too fast? He can't get rid of his tail, so his luck isn't smooth?" But then Xiao Xinyu shook his head. "He's being rejected." "Huh?" Shuelei was immediately stupefied. Luo Nan suddenly raised his head from the side. Xiao Xinyu's palm pressed against the outer edge of the metal ball, and the rolling and spinning ball came to a stop with a hum. Xiao Xinyu had already opened the outer shell of the ball while it was still swaying slightly. He took out the complex mechanical device from within the cavity. "You should be talking about this." Xiao Xinyu spoke calmly. "To put it simply, the cultivation of a human is like drawing a circle. The self is the center of the circle. Layer by layer, the circle expands outwards. The range of control grows larger and larger, and the weight grows heavier and heavier. But no matter what, the heart must be unhindered up and down. Following the heart is the right path. If it's heavy and cumbersome, difficult to move, then it's called being too big to get rid of." Luo Nan first looked at the mechanical device. He was lost in thought for a while, and then he looked at Xiao Xinyu. "Then, right now, you're just a burden. You're a carrier." Xiao Xinyu placed the mechanical device back into the cavity, and he let the metal ball spin once more. "I think you know just how much strength you have at the center of the circle." Luo Nan thought of the inscribed sphere's depths. There was a mass of fire that was completely devoid of heat. He took a deep breath. "But I'm still inside, only a part of it." Xiao Xinyu responded faintly. "This technique isn't yours." Chapter 284. Cough, Gym Master. On the other side, Shuelei was a bit flustered. He knew the obsession in Luo Nan's heart. In layman terms, anything that involved formatting theory was Luo Nan's reverse scale. He was really afraid that Luo Nan would turn around and leave in anger. He did his best to salvage the situation. He hoped that Xiao Xinyu would not speak too harshly and leave some leeway for Luo Nan to turn around. Unfortunately, his eyes were blocked in the darkness. Even if he did, the possibility of Xiao Xinyu changing his words was close to zero, given his temperament. The Tai Chi ball continued to spin endlessly in the bowl tray. The luminous patterns on its surface gradually became clear amidst the grinding sounds. Xiao Xinyu turned his gaze. He had no intention of speaking again. As for Luo Nan, the end of his gaze stopped on Xiao Xinyu's face. He had been like this ever since Luo Nan said, without a doubt. But he did not make the next move. He stood in place like a stone statue. Even his breathing was sealed. Shuele looked left and right. In the end, he could not continue. He could only hang his head and pray in secret, hoping that the heavens would open their eyes and not cause trouble. For a time, there was only the grinding Tai Chi ball in the spacious room. It rolled from one heart to another. An unknown amount of time passed. Luo Nan, whose entire body was stiff, suddenly took a step forward. He raised a hand and broke through the incorporeal layer of stone. He reached out and pressed the rolling Tai Chi ball. The metal ball rubbed against his palm. Due to the uneven application of external force, the metal ball bounced twice, nearly flipping over. It stabilized with great difficulty, rocking back and forth in the bowl tray. The luminous patterns naturally disappeared. Xiao Xinyu furrowed his brows and raised his eyes to meet Luo Nan's gaze. The gym master didn't like to be disturbed when he was fiddling with the Tai Chi ball. Shuele's heart beat wildly. He wanted to cry, but no tears came out of the situation before him. A few days ago, he suggested that Luo Nan come to the Daoguan to learn breathing techniques. He never imagined that this would happen, but the following development was not as pessimistic as Shuele imagined. Luo Nan was not angry at being criticized for his formatting theory. Xiao Xinyu did not get angry when the Tai Chi ball stopped spinning. When monotonous sound that could move people's hearts faded away, Luo Nan's whisper grew clearer. Gym Master Xiao, the only flaw in my technique is that it does not take the body into consideration. Am I right? I don't believe that it is your technique. Xiao Xinyu also stretched out his hand and pressed it against the Tai Chi ball. This was the second time he had done something similar. At the same time, Luo Nan found it hard to accept these words. At this moment, both of their palms were pressed against the Tai Chi ball. The metal ball became even quieter, unable to move. In this subtle contest of strength, Xiao Xinyu slowly replied, "The right path of cultivation in the world should be from the inside to the outside, from me to him. Water moves according to the mountains. Qi moves according to the body, and the charm is within. What does it have to do with me if it's just a myriad of phenomena outside the body?" Shuele felt dizzy listening to Xiao Xinyu's pronouncements, but Luo Nan understood each and every word. Not only was it personally related, but Xiao Xinyu's words touched upon a concept Luo Nan was most familiar with. Me. Why did it sound so ironic? The 16 words written on the title page of Grandpa's notebook were all preceded by the word I. My heart is a prison. My heart is a furnace. My heart calls for a mirror. My heart calls for a country. Wasn't formatting theory rooted in me? How could it not be? It was this root that caused Luo Nan to blurt out his rebuttal. It can't be. When I cultivate, I always use the me as the axis. What do you use to determine the me? Xiao Xinyu did not give Luo Nan the chance to continue arguing. He directly pierced through Luo Nan's final line of defense. The me of cultivation has the structure of the body and bones, the circulation of energy and blood, and the changes of movement and stillness. It must exhaust the nature of matter. Only by being unprepared can one guarantee every step and every seal without any mistakes. You have failed to do this. Luo Nan stopped talking. He listened in silence. Using pure consciousness as a reference, without any material foundation, is only natural for one to make mistakes. If it were someone else, their body and soul would be out of balance to a certain degree. They would be restrained, and it would be difficult to move even an inch. But you're like a towering iceberg, expanding layer by layer. There are no signs of restrictions. Xiao Xinyu did not continue speaking after this, but his meaning was clear and unmistakable. No matter how vast and powerful the structure of the mental plane is, the core mechanism that increases and decreases changes cannot be linked to the person. How can it be said to be yours? Luo Nan's eyes drooped as he stared at the Tai Chi ball in front of him. He was a bit lost in thought. Seeing that the room was about to enter a state of silence, Shuelei could no longer hold back. If there really is such a problem, then it must be adjusted. Gym Master, this can be adjusted, right? Shuelei's choice of words was very particular, but Xiaoshinyu's response was very straightforward. External techniques cannot be used by me. It is not too late to start anew and return to the right path. Luo Nan raised his head upon hearing this and looked straight at Xiaoshinyu. His face was wooden and expressionless. Shuelei saw that the situation was far from good. He rushed forward a step and grabbed Luo Nan's right arm. You can mull over this a bit more. Luo Nan knew what Shuelei was nervous about, but he was not actually angry. He was just thinking about his grandfather. It was probably because Xiaoshinyu's emaciated physique was a bit similar to his grandfather's. Luo Nan's thoughts drifted to the sanatorium. There was an insane old man there, tormented by illness to the point that he was no longer human. His life was nearing its end. What had caused all of this? Luo Nan was not a doctor. He was unable to make an accurate judgment. However, there was an obvious fact right now. Luo Nan had previously confirmed that he was agitated by anger, but it was meaningless to improve the old man's illness. On the other hand, if Luo Nan admitted the flaws of formatting theory and was able to make some amendments on this basis, then the positive effects would likely be immediate. Luo Nan's mind was a bit absent-minded at this moment. His thoughts changed as fast as lightning, but it was never a simple process. The undercurrent of subversive concepts churned the sand in his heart. Over 5 years, the hardships and obsession of refining and taking medicine day in and day out drifted and surged at this moment. He inexplicably cut into the silhouette of gear under the setting sun. He also looked across the lake at the empty treehouse. Luo Nan was unable to grasp his own emotions for a time, but he had already made up his mind. He took a deep breath, forgetting about whether or not it was flawed. He took a step back and faced Xiaoshinyu, bowing heavily. I cultivate in formatting theory. It is my grandfather's life's work. I can't give it up no matter what. If the gym master is able to help me mend my flaws and correct my mistakes, I will never forget this favor. Xiaoshinyu seemed to be startled for a moment. Then he shook his head. You are willing to be controlled by the law. You wish to be imprisoned, but you cannot obtain it. Luo Nan just looked at him. Can I? Xiaoshinyu answered normally. I'm not proficient in visualization and the like. I can only practice martial arts and refine energy. I can't deal with the so-called flaws and errors in your formatting theory. At most, I can help you strengthen your body, increase the endurance of your body, and give you the space to adjust and experiment. It's enough. Luo Nan was resolute and decisive. Chapter 285. The mind was born from objects. It died from objects. The mind was in the eyes. Luo Nan seemed to be asleep, yet not asleep. He seemed to be awake, yet not awake. It was as if he had entered a meditative state. He really did see the visualization diagram revolving in the void. But at the same time, there were also countless shadows that seemed to be real, yet were not. They filled the air inside and outside. Every shadow was similar to his figure. They seemed to be everywhere, yet not a single one was real. Then Luo Nan's mind sank down, pointing straight at the center of the inscribed sphere. He fell into the deep prison. The shadows were truly like a shadow following the body. They all followed him inside. Thousands of dark chains moved in unison amidst the crashing vibrations. They interweaved like a net, and in the depths of the prison, the lukewarm firelight flickered, illuminating layers upon layers of chaos. It blended and intersected with the myriad of shadows. It was impossible to distinguish them clearly. It was like a flock of bats. The demonic shadows danced, and the waves and clouds were unpredictable. Me? Which is me? In his daze, Luo Nan's point of view changed. It was as if he was looking down from high above. He saw the light coming up, and the firelight in his eyes merged into one. It radiated great light, suppressing the demonic shadows. He suddenly woke up. He opened his eyes. They were a bit blurry at first because the room was dusky. The sky had yet to brighten. Only the light from the human figurine lamps shone into the hall. Light and shadow interweaved, forming silhouettes above the junk in the room. The ordinary and mediocre images gave him an indescribable feeling of novelty. He didn't know if it was a psychological effect. Luo Nan flipped over and sat up. The blanket covering his body slid down. The chill of early morning flowed through the open door, making him shrink back. A low and hoarse voice suddenly rang out from the corner of the room. It was Xiaoxinyu. Empty your vital energy. Hear and see in the dark. The heart is blessed with blessings, but not a single thought arises. It's time for you to do your morning lesson. Do as he did last night. Luo Nan closed his eyes and opened them once more. This time, the aftershocks from his dream were eliminated, and he truly woke up. He looked at his wristband. It was a bit past 4:30 in the morning. No wonder it was so dark outside. Xiaoxinyu did not say anything after that. However, Luo Nan could feel a gaze resting on his body, supervising his homework. Yes, the hard days had begun since last night. Luo Nan did not say much. After calming his mind, he began to breathe. His mouth and nose gradually became misty. Luo Nan didn't take it a step further after finding his rhythm. He first massaged his face, especially the acupuncture points around his eye sockets. Then he reached out and crossed his legs. His fingers and palms intersected, and he used a special technique to press. Then he rubbed his feet. His hands had a specific position, but his movements weren't very pleasing to look at. His hands had specific positions, but his movements were not very good. Luo Nan subconsciously increased the strength of his hand. Soon his hands and feet became warm, and his tendons and meridians became unobstructed. After that, he put his hands behind his back and tried his best to press the area on both sides of his back. This series of movements was like doing exercises, an older version. As he was doing this, Luo Nan felt a pain on his back. Xiaoxinyu had used a finger to jab into a point, and Luo Nan's voice entered his ear once more. Here, you need more strength. Luo Nan's breathing was chaotic for a moment, but he soon adjusted himself. He followed Xiaoxinyu's request and hooked his hand to touch Xiaoxinyu. He continued to press down until it was sore and hot. Luo, but soon. Luo. Luo, done. Done. Luo. Most importantly, no matter which part of the body he moved, his eyes would follow it closely. If there was even the slightest misalignment, Xiaoxinyu would immediately speak up to correct it or even make a move to reverse it. Luo Nan did this 9 times. Though he didn't seem to leave his original spot, the consumption was enormous. A layer of sweat had already appeared on Luo Nan's body. It was especially so for his eyes, which had to be moved from time to time. Coupled with the effect of the massage, it was already slightly hot, as if there was steam rising in his eyes. He was on the verge of tears. Luo Nan closed his eyes slightly and restrained his thoughts. Only now did he conclude his cultivation. This series of movements was something he had just learned last night. Xiaoxinyu had taught him step by step how to massage his head, hands, feet, and torso, how to bend and stretch his limbs, and how to supplement his breathing. This included the position's strength, sensations, reactions, and so on. This was the stupid method that Xiaoxinyu spoke of. It was methodical, and there was almost no room for the mind to think or visualize, and there was not the slightest bit of falsehood. Xiaoxinyu said, "It is shaped like a bowl, bearing its weight, yet repelling it. A strand of its spirit is imprisoned within, yet its tail is too big to fall off. If you want to correct it, the first thing to do is to open up the layered membrane between the essence, energy, and spirit. Only by starting with the body, cultivating both inside and outside, strengthening the body's functions, cultivating vital energy. It is like adding a fire to the bottom of the bowl, using the body's temperature to melt the tip of the iceberg and obtain a share of the soup. If you want to reach the standard of temperature, you can no longer practice pure tranquility techniques. You need to exert force while walking, sitting, and lying down. You need to circulate your vital energy functions. According to Xiaoxinyu's words, Luo Nan's current cultivation was shackled by external techniques. His fleshly body was weak. He was only connected to the inside and outside of his body through the 9 orifices. The so-called 9 orifices were the eyes, ears, mouth, and nose, and the 2 orifices of the lower body. There was also the saying of the 9 orifices and 3 essentials. The eyes, ears, and mouth were the most important. The eyes were the master. The written charm had a saying, "The mind is born from objects, dies from objects." The key lies in the eyes. Luo Nan's cultivation was on the mental plane. It was difficult to utilize the fleshly body. Right now, he needed to utilize the natural physical properties of the body, like drawing water from a canal. He needed to gradually form a scale and seek a breakthrough. Luo Nan only half understood Xiaoshinyu's theory. He just knew that he needed to start with the eye's orifice. Speaking of which, he had yet to form his self-format in his early years. He had only manifested a few small abilities. Aside from the big stomach king, which strengthened the digestive and absorption capabilities of his internal organs, his true external manifestation method, the hypnotist, was to use the eyes as a medium to intimidate the mind. Luo Nan had gained a bit from his own experiences. The morning class lasted for nearly an hour, ending at 5:30 a.m. Luo Nan washed his face and rinsed his mouth. When he stepped into the courtyard, he saw Shui Lei sweeping the fallen leaves in the courtyard. Luo Nan went to help, but he was refused. "Save some energy. There won't be a public bus to the school in a bit." "Run there? Isn't it a bit late today?" It was nearly 50 kilometers from the Daoguan to Acumen College. It was not that Luo Nan had never run such a distance before, but it was almost 6 o'clock. He estimated his own abilities and did not believe that he could make it before class started. "Oh my, your ambition is commendable." Shui Lei grinned and gave Luo Nan a thumbs up. But then he shook his head. "I'm the one running there. Your current body isn't suitable for running. You can make do with the public bike spots here at Basan Building." "Oh, Nanster, your complexion is quite good today." Luo Nan felt quite good about himself. The soreness of his body had yet to subside, but his mind was focused. His energy flowed smoothly, and his mind was clear. He was quite different from yesterday. He had a general idea of what was going on. It had been a month since he achieved the self-format of "My Heart's a Prison." He had stopped the usual process of making medicine and taking medicine. He did not have a practical cultivation method. Most of the time, he was tired of dealing with the endlessly soaring soul strength. He was in a very passive state. Even if he polished a few techniques, they were scattered and not systematic. Right now, Xiaoshinyu's path was solid. Every segment and every item was a practical step. Even if it was a stupid method, Luo Nan now had a starting point. Luo Nan was not afraid of hard work. He was only afraid that hard work was meaningless. Compared to the big goal of verifying the correctness of formatting theory and justifying his grandfather's name, the small goal that Xiaoshinyu had set for him was truly within reach. Whether it was the goal decomposition or self-consolation, the gloominess in Luo Nan's heart was alleviated by quite a bit. Focus your eyes to see the land illuminated by candlelight. Don't let it go. Don't lose it. Chapter 286. Yeah, I can't go to the hospital this morning. Luo Nan rode his bicycle and asked Bai Xinyan for a leave of absence. His breathing was hurried. The cold wind that assaulted his face choked him, and he coughed a few times. Bai Xinyan's ears were sharp. She roughly judged Luo Nan's current situation. Morning exercise. Pay attention to the amount of exercise. As for treatment, your current condition is stable. It's fine to miss it once in a while. Oh, right. How's the sleeping ability going? Luo Nan grunted and grunted in response. He didn't say much. Bai Xinyan didn't ask any more questions and quickly hung up. It looked like she was going to carry out the pleasure therapy to the end with such an attitude. Luo Nan huffed and puffed, forming faint white smoke in the cold morning. Right now, it was 7:20 in the morning. He was still one street away from his final destination, Acumen College. But he had been riding for nearly 2 hours, and his stamina was pretty much squeezed out. Shuele was ahead of him by a body length. Right now, Luo Nen felt that his thighs were stiff. His calf muscles were spasming. His chest and back felt as if they had been washed. He couldn't even stand up on the bicycle. Shuele looked back and slowed down a bit. It could be seen that he still had energy to spare. Luo Nen really envied this animal that seemed to never know exhaustion. Shuele didn't travel the distance of nearly 50 kilometers in a well-behaved manner. He was like a long-distance runner all the way down. During this time, he switched to many different running styles. Many times he punched and kicked. He leaped between floors as he advanced. In terms of movement volume, in terms of consumption, he exceeded Luo Nan by several tens of times. At this moment, even if the two of them slowed down, Shuele's movement intensity was also correspondingly increasing based on the distance he advanced. Beside him, the sounds of fists and sleeves slicing through the air could be heard. He was simply a training maniac who was harsh on himself and sweating like rain. If Shuele was like this every day, Luo Nin could more or less understand why Shuele possessed such astonishing strength that even Zhang Yingying and the other awakened could not stop praising him at such a young age. Speaking of which, Luo Nan had been brought into a rhythm by Shuele today. He had practically brought out the strength of a race. The cyclist was led around in circles by the runner. It was quite embarrassing just thinking about it. Finally, Shuele's morning exercise came to an end. He stopped and let out a long breath before switching to a brisk walk. Perhaps it was because he felt Luo Nan's gaze that he turned his face. "Nanster, don't be offended. It's not good to talk when I'm training." Indeed, Shuele hadn't spoken a single word along the way, which was quite different from his straightforward and talkative personality. "It's nothing. It's pretty good this way." Luo Nen was truly impressed. He was also deeply moved. How can you not put in effort when it comes to practicing martial arts? Shuele didn't immediately speak. He sized Luo Nen up and down a few times. Then he grinned and said, "The gym master often says that luck is number one in martial cultivation. If you can't grasp your luck, then don't mention anything else." Luo Nen went, He really couldn't think of any connection here. He couldn't help but ask, "What's the theory behind this?" The dojo master once used breathing as an example and talked about it. "Let me tell you about it." Shuele shook his head and said, "The human body has respiration and metabolism, and so does the world. We are insignificant and short-sighted. We can only see what's in front of us, concentrating on our own breath and breath. The breath of the world needs to be sought in the hazy, long river of time. We are unable to see the flow of time. It's very difficult for us to coordinate our breathing with the breathing of the world. But we can be sailors. We can use our bodies as boats. We can use fine operations to ensure that we don't miss the slightest bit of wind direction and water flow within the waves of the long river of time. In the end, we can use the breath of the world to assist the breath of a single person. Whether it's going with the current or against the waves, the speed of a boat is faster than the speed of water. This is the true meaning of cultivation. Within this, wind direction and water flow are luck. Sand can be gathered to form a tower. Wood can be gathered to form a forest. Small forces can be gathered to become great forces. One by one, they respond to the body and soul, strengthening the body and transforming the vital energy. Isn't this quite hard to understand? Shuele was a bit uncertain of Luo Nan's ability to understand as he spoke. Luo Nan grunted. He knew that Shuele wanted to remind him of a few things. It was probably something about focus and willpower, but Luo Nan was unable to understand specifics. Shuele laughed. "I didn't understand at the time either. But then the gym master explained that we are all people who operate boats. It's hard to avoid being surrounded by dangers as we traverse the long river of time. In the olden days, when a fisherman on a river encountered a rapids and dangerous shoals, the boat would be destroyed and the people would die. The exhaustion of strength was secondary. The exhaustion of the mind to observe and utilize the water was the main problem. Practicing martial arts and cultivating may seem like tempering one's strength, but in reality, it tempers the willpower. It tortures the mind. Whether it's ordinary training or facing enemies in battle, the mind comes before the energy, and the energy comes before the strength. And the weight of the exhaustion should be lower. That's the only reasonable thing to do. Luonin looked at Shuele. This time, he finally confirmed it. Wasn't he the type of person that Shuele spoke of? Wasn't he the type of person who consumed far more physical strength than mental strength? The bodily functions of his entire body were already at their limits, but his mind was still very active. From Shuele's perspective, was his concentration and concentration not enough? Was this a criticism? With Shuele's temperament, no matter how tactful his words were, this was the limit. For a time, the exhaustion on Luonan's body felt like it was being pricked by needles. Even the breath he breathed out was a bit feverish. Shuele was a bit worried that he might have gone overboard with his words. He subconsciously waved his hand, but he himself was a bit nervous. Nanster, actually where should the brain be used in order to be focused, in order to be used in a reasonable manner? Luonin didn't let Shuele speak nonsense. He asked very seriously. Luonin wouldn't get angry over such a small matter as his friend, but he really didn't understand. Logically speaking, he had been studying and practicing extremely seriously from last night until now. There shouldn't have been any instances of his mind wandering off or slacking off. Shuele let out a sigh of relief when he saw that Luonan's state of mind was fine. He hurriedly explained, Nanster, you really are working hard, but you're not too familiar with the know-how inside. You're using your functions carelessly. You must know that walking, sitting, and lying down are all part of cultivation. Every movement of your hands and feet requires effort. You need to use your heart. You cultivate the eye's orifice. The eyes are the light of the mind. Wherever the eyes go, the heart goes. Every movement of your hands and feet requires the eyes to take care of them. Luonin looked at his hands and feet and laughed bitterly. But I'm riding a bike. Everything in a multitude returns to their roots. If your hands and feet move, then guard your dantian region. These are just small tricks. The truly difficult part is to look at yourself and others without leaving a single strand behind. Don't give up a single drop. Go from the outside to the inside. Return to your roots. Only then will you know what it means to shine like a candle. Only then will you know what it means to work hard. Only then will you know what true hardship is. Cough. The gym master told me to come here to tell you this. The last sentence was the bottom line. Luonin was stupefied for a moment. His gaze moved away from Shuele's body. He first looked at his clothes, which were nearly drenched in sweat. Soon he raised his head and looked at the pedestrians coming and going on the street. Most of the pedestrians were students at this hour, but they were of all shapes and colors. Luonin used his mental clairvoyance and roughly calculated that there were around 700 to 800 people on this street. Chapter 287. Luonin sat on the stone steps. The loose-leaf notebook rested on his knees, positioned at a comfortable angle. Behind him, the classical auditorium only blocked half of the sunlight. The lukewarm sunlight and the chilly shadows laid side by side. He just so happened to be at the boundary of light and shadow. He faced the complex lighting environment with his eyes half squinted. His focus overlapped with the tip of his pen, and he moved his pen along the surface of the paper, revealing neat characters. The breathing metabolism of heaven and earth is the format of heaven and earth. The breathing metabolism of the human body is the format of the self. In order to make the tiny self format display its effect within the hazy heaven and earth format, not only must the power be great, but the power must also be small. I did it too crudely in the past. I did it too clumsily. He raised his head as he wrote to this point. His gaze cut across the stream of people outside the auditorium. The auditorium and the vicinity of the South Bank Riverbank were undoubtedly the areas with the most student congregated during society activity time. They spanned many ages, high and low, big and small, beautiful and beautiful men and women. They came and went, forming a dynamic picture. If this were 10 days ago, Luo Nan's observations would have transformed into a sketch. He would have captured a few people with special characteristics to form the typical characteristics of this place and time. If this were 3 days ago, Luo Nan would have done his best to distinguish and memorize everyone within his line of sight. Their faces, their movements, their clothing, their relationships with each other, and so on. Right now, Luo Nan was sitting on the steps of the auditorium. He swept his eyes across and selected 10 people from the several hundred people below the steps. These 10 people were in different positions. There were men and women. They were of different ages and different societies. In the next half-minute, these 10 people passed by Luo Nan's side in order to ascend the auditorium. Compared to the others, these 10 people were the closest to Luo Nan. There was practically no difference in the order they passed by. It was only until the last 2 people answered the phone that a situation where the order was reversed appeared. Not bad, 80%. Bystanders couldn't see it, but Luo Nan understood it clearly. Every time a person passed by 2 meters away, the muscles of his body would tense up and relax. His pores would open and close in response. This was how he was startled. He ensured that he would be able to jump up and react when each person approached him. His potential was hidden and not released, but it consumed quite a bit. A thin layer of sweat covered his body by the time the 10 people passed by. His breathing was a bit ragged. This was how much physical strength was consumed, and the loss of mental strength was even greater. His 80% accuracy rate was not achieved by luck, but by observing the gazes, postures, steps, positions, and distances of hundreds of people, from big to small, from the outside to the inside. This was precisely what Jim Master Shio meant when he said, "With me as the master, look at yourself and look at others." He was not an inanimate object like a camera, but a living person. Every time he glanced at someone, he had to refer to himself. He had to clarify key information, determine priorities, foresee, prepare, and react accordingly. Therefore, the cultivation of the eye's orifice had never been focused on cultivating the eyes. Instead, the eye's orifice was the forerunner, and it was a systematic project that integrated heart strength, vitality, and the body into one. It was a wondrous cultivation that used a single point to move the whole body. Luo Nan spent nearly a week to comprehend it. Then he used another 3 days to consolidate it. On the 10th day, he could be considered to have crossed the threshold. Thinking back to the cultivation process, it was truly unbearable. This required Luo Nan to maintain a high level of acuity from beginning to end. He was not allowed to be distracted or absent-minded. In the beginning, he was unable to accurately determine the priorities of information. He just felt that his eyes were not meticulous enough. He hated that he could not copy everything in his field of vision. It seemed that if he did not do this, he would not be able to reach the standard of arduous cultivation that Jim Master Shio spoke of. This meant that he was completely focused at every moment, tormenting his mind until his eyesight and brain power were squeezed clean. Now that he thought back to it, Luo Nan felt that his eyes were sore and swollen. He reflexively wanted to shed tears, or he might as well just close his eyes, lie down, and sleep. This was the greatest joy in the world. When Bai Xinyan saw Luo Nan in this state, she completely canceled her Frost River waterway training. According to her, Xioshinyu's torture was more effective than any consumption of energy. If Luo Nan continued to burn like this, Luo Nan would not be able to last until Dr. Clay, who had repeatedly delayed his trip, arrived at Xia City. Luo Nan now knew that he had taken a detour, but Jim Master Shio had lightly said that beginners shouldn't be afraid of going overboard. It was possible to want to be neutral, to foresee the extremes, and to measure the increase and decrease. All right, Luo Nan would remember to measure the increase and decrease for the rest of his life. Luo Nan flipped his notebook forward to the flexible e-ink screen. He opened the statistical form and added the results of this training. Then he returned to the diary page and held a pen to write. October 25th, training with 1,000 people completed. Overall success rate, 72. 2%. After dividing into groups, success rate, 55. 6%. Final success rate, 19%. After completing the basic data analysis, Luo Nan closed his notebook. He ignored the strange gazes of the pedestrians around him and took out a bottle of medicine. He poured a drop of eye drops into his eyes and did a facial massage. His eyes were first soaked with coolness, then steam rose in the blink of an eye. The medicinal strength of his fingers seeped in, fusing with his vital energy and moisturizing his eyes. The medicine was a secret recipe provided by Gym Master Xiao. It was concocted by Bro Octopus, and it could relieve eye fatigue. But then again, using his eyes too much was a sign of his clumsiness. The human eye was a precise and complex structure. Anatomically speaking, one would not be able to find the existence of the eye's orifice even if they searched through all the positions of the eyes. The so-called eye's orifice was actually the eyes and its corresponding functions. It interfered with the mental plane to form a special structure. It lay between the virtual and the real. Only in this place could one achieve the effect of connecting the inside and the outside, radiating with spiritual light. It was practically impossible for a normal person to possess the eye's orifice. Only by possessing a certain level of cultivation could one realize the interference between the mental and the material plane. Only then would the eye's orifice be gradually constructed. It was the same as the shield of truth. The shield of truth that Luo Nen experienced was considered a temporary structure. But building the eye's orifice was tantamount to building a permanent facility. Luo Nen already had a slight feeling. His eyelids drooped down, but he could feel a heavy pressure acting on them. The pressure came from the format pyramid. It was his power on the mental plane. It was the influence it had on his body on the material plane. Other people cultivated by creating something out of nothing. Only Luo Nan wanted to steal a beam and replace a pillar. He shifted the power that was trapped in the My Heart's a Prison format to a controllable level. After these days of exploration, Luo Nan felt that calling it confinement was not completely correct. It should be said that his soul strength had entered a processing line. It had to complete the process and become a certain finished product before it could be taken off the line. This greatly limited the scope of its usage. It was fine to use chains to bind people, but it was hard to use it for embroidery. If Luo Nan really wanted to transport the raw materials, then he would need to break through the barrier of My Heart's a Prison. First, he would have to consume the materials internally. It could be said that not even 1 out of 100 could be saved, and it had to be done on and off. There was no efficiency to speak of. It was precisely because of this that the results of the soul strength activation exercises in the simulator layer of the psychic wave network were so terrible. But now that he was cultivating in the eye's orifice, the intermittent supply was not unbearable. This kind of work of grinding with water had the material plane constantly bearing and echoing it. It could be said that dripping water wears away a stone. Even if only a single drop was transported out every day, it would leave a mark when it smashed down. It would be like this day in and day out. It would be like a depression that could store water. Like this, it would gradually expand. Plus, Luo Nen was not that miserable yet. The eye's orifice that Luo Nen had just built was like a pool that stored water. Soul strength trickled in. As long as Luo Nen took care of it carefully and prevented it from evaporating or leaking, it could become a pool, a lake, or a sea after a long time. At this point, Luo Nen did not need Gym Master Xiao to mention it again. Luo Nen naturally understood the principle of concealment. He used 70% of his soul strength every day and stored 30%. 70% was used to temper the eye's orifice and build the structure. The remaining 30% was stored within. When Luo Nen closed his eyes, it was like rolling beads spinning in his eye sockets. It seemed cold, but it wasn't cold. It seemed hot, but it wasn't hot. It was warm and cool. It was hard to describe the wondrous feeling. Later on, it seemed as if a ball of light had lit up in his skull. It was hazy at first, like a candle that was about to go out. But if Luo Nen worked hard every day and wiped it, he would make progress. There was another name for this. One heart lantern, a candle illuminating the 9 underworlds. Jim Master Shio had said that when the heart lantern probed and illuminated the inner organs, Luo Nen would have achieved minor success in the eye's orifice. At this point, the eye's orifice had truly set up a platform. It had an outline. It was no longer a mirage or the ravings of a madman. Luo Nen didn't like to open his eyes because of this, especially when he was alone. He would droop his eyelids and feel the moist, warm, and cool feeling of the glimmering candlelight. It was truly a good feeling. He sat there, seemingly in peace yet not awake. His eyes could not see anyone, and he did not deliberately use his mental senses. Yet the pedestrians that passed by him all left behind faintly discernible traces on his body. When the heart lantern shone, the traces were revealed. Sometimes Luo Nan felt that he was like a spider. He used this marvelous method to weave an incorporeal web. The multitude of living beings, as long as they passed through, would give him a stir, and he would respond accordingly. In comparison, clairvoyance on the mental plane had a greater range and a deeper level, but it definitely did not have such a direct and pure reaction mechanism. Huh? Luo Nan's shoulders suddenly slumped, but he was a step too late. Shuelei pressed down on him from behind, and the feeling of a spider weaving a web instantly shattered. The bug was too big. Huh? Did you use mental senses? No. Luo Nan's reaction failed. He was a bit depressed, but he still narrowed his eyes and responded with a single word in a bad mood. Then you can see me coming from behind? The heart lantern of the eye's orifice illuminates oneself and others. It's only been a few days. Beginners need to smelt their thoughts, open their flesh and bones, and build their foundation in 100 days. I used 2 months back in the day. Even Shuelei was a bit envious when he saw Luo Nan's progress. I haven't succeeded yet, and I have a foundation. The gym master said it earlier. Even if your foundation is deep, you're mostly affected by external techniques. Your body is weak. It's easy to understand, but it's harder to achieve than a normal person. Today is the 25th. You can see signs within 10 days. You're a genius. It's not that exaggerated. I can still borrow a bit of strength. Luo Nan had a self-knowledge that was hard for bystanders to understand. Speaking of which, it was quite a coincidence. An electric chain suddenly cut through his mind at this very moment. It flashed and disappeared, but it stirred up his thoughts. The heart lantern flickered, losing its stability and harmony, and its radiance grew brighter and brighter. He furrowed his brows. It leaked again. The land of the lake overflowed a bit. His small pond couldn't contain it. Before he could finish his thoughts, someone shouted from below the stairs, "Nanster, Leister, it's time." There was no need to look to know that Siet Junping had come to pick them up. Luo Nan temporarily dispersed his mind. He stood up and walked down the stairs shoulder to shoulder with Shuelei. They entered the car. Chapter 288. The sightseeing bus sped through the campus. Most of the students of Acumen College were still brainstorming for the club activities. They were trembling with fear for the 8 credits a year. The people on the bus were truly hateful. Unfortunately, no one on the bus had this awareness. In a certain sense, they were a group of people isolated from the real campus. Shuelei sat in the front seat and chatted with Xie Junping about the party. He was a bit curious and nervous after entering a completely unfamiliar circle. Xie Junping was laughing and joking with him. He spoke half-truths and half-lies, playing around with him. Luo Nan sat in the back. At first, he listened to Xie Junping and Shuelei chat, but then his mind sunk into the heart lantern of the eye's orifice. He clairvoyantly observed the flickering flames and the changes in the surrounding environment, not missing a hair. The heart lantern of the eye's orifice lit up, illuminating a region of his brain. The results of this cultivation were quite mysterious, but it wasn't the first guest in Luo Nan's brain. There was another object revolving around the heart lantern right now, the external neuron. This dynamo core was like a dragon that floated in his brain. It moved around the lantern, appearing and disappearing from time to time. When it got closer, the electricity overflowed, baring its fangs and brandishing its claws. It intersected with the flames of the heart lantern, swallowing and spitting. It seemed as if it could be swallowed at any time. It made one's heart tremble with fear. This sort of situation had existed not long after the heart lantern was lit, and it absolutely didn't just look scary. This was the first time this thing came close. The energies of both sides reacted, and the electricity radiating from the external neuron directly extinguished the heart lantern. Luo Nan's many days of hard work were destroyed in an instant. Similar situations occurred 7 times in a row, tormenting Luo Nan until he began to doubt his life. In the 8th round, where he was close to despair, the electricity directly entered the heart lantern. It strongly fueled the ignition, illuminating everything with light. The amount of growth this time was 10 times more than the sum of his hard-earned savings. Over the next few days, the external neuron would come every time he finished cultivating in the eye's orifice. It would bombard the heart lantern with electricity. Luo Nan's goal of 1,000 people per day was to form groups of 100 people. He cultivated in 10 groups every day, and this lightning dragon would appear 10 times. Though it was never extinguished, sometimes the tyrannical electricity would greatly dampen the brightness and harmony of the heart lantern. If Luo Nan hadn't strengthened it a few times in between, Luo Nan's progress would have been unsightly. It was for this reason that Luo Nan admired Shuele. His mind was absent-minded. Later, Luo Nan discovered that the external neuron had the void depository function. When his soul was entrusted to it, it was like entering an empty world. There were no distracting psychic waves. Later, the Wraith sign hunted and created a disturbance. He relied on the external neuron to cushion the pressure, saving his life. Since then, Luo Nan had always entrusted his soul to the external neuron to reduce the pressure. He gradually grew accustomed to it. So it was more accurate to say that Luo Nan's body and soul had been lacking a fusion for a very long time. Most of his soul was entrusted to the external neuron. Even though this strange object was hidden in his brain, it was not an organ of his flesh and blood. There was still a layer separating the two. Xiao Xinyu said that the fleshly body was rejected by the external technique. When combined with reality, it was actually a barrier and conflict between the external neuron, which was the carrier of the soul, and the naturally existing fleshly body. This was the crux of the problem. At the very least, this was the case in the realm of understanding. This was where the matter came to a dead end. Luo Nan could control the external neuron, causing it to move to various parts of his brain. He could even drive it out. However, his frail, fleshly body was far from being able to bear the heavy pressure of his soul body. He could not do without the void depository function. Moreover, in the end, he would need to transfer soul strength from the My Heart's a Prison format to refine it. The connection between the eye's orifice and it was inevitable. Especially after every refinement of the orifice, the eye's orifice would become nimble and harmonious, linking his body and soul. It was like the positive and negative charges in a rain cloud attracting each other. The situation of lightning bombarding the heart lantern was inevitable. This meant that every time Luo Nan practiced, he would have to face the dangerous test of entering a state of mental derangement. He failed the first 7 times, but he persevered through the next few dozen times. He even obtained some benefits. It looked like this business was feasible. However, the matter of cultivation required meticulous concentration. What they feared the most were ups and downs. Even if this kind of benefit was multiplied by 10 times, it would not be able to withstand the destructive blow brought by a moment of crisis. The problem is fatal, and having no one to help is even more fatal. Luo Nan did not open his eyes. He just used his fingertips to streak across the pages of the notebook, flipping them back and forth. The external neuron was a core, a secret that could easily be stripped away. He would not tell anyone about its existence. This led him to rely on himself. He pondered over his plans bit by bit. It had been 6 days since the first time the heart lantern was lit. He had dealt with 60 strikes of lightning. In the beginning, Luo Nin could not think of anything else. He could only do his utmost to strengthen the structure of the eye's orifice. He would rather greatly slow down his progress in order to stabilize the foundation of the heart lantern. He even referred to the configuration of Fairchild's shield of truth. He borrowed the half-formed eye's orifice, the fusion of body and soul. He spent a great deal of effort to fine-tune the microscopic structure of the eyes. It was for no other purpose than to seek stability. Though this method was stupid, the results were decent. Especially after repeated experiences a few dozen times, it was like the forging method of tempered steel in ancient times. Luo Nin forged and hammered again and again, causing the structure of the eye's orifice to become tough and solid. The ignited heart lantern emitted a mellow and pure intent. Only in this way was he able to block 53 strikes of lightning in a row and remain undefeated. However, Luo Nin still had a deep worry in his heart. This worry grew heavier and heavier as he pondered deeper and deeper into the phenomenon of the heart lantern being electrocuted. "Nanster, what are you thinking about?" Xie Juanping's deliberately raised voice finally entered Luo Nin's ears. Luo Nin was a bit startled. He half opened his eyes and looked forward. "What's wrong?" Shuelei's complaint rang out at the same time. "Don't disturb him. Maybe he's cultivating." Xie Juanping laughed. "The car is swaying back and forth. What kind of cultivation is he cultivating? Aren't you afraid of running amok?" Luo Nin was left speechless after being stabbed in the face. Xie Juanping didn't look at the road. He turned his head and laughed. People train in martial arts. The more they train, the more spirited they become. For example, Leister. But look at you. You've been drooping your eyes these past few days. It's like you haven't woken up yet. If you train like this, which pretty girl would pay attention to you? Luo Nin leaned back, doing his best to relax his body. His eyes remained squinted. "Yesterday, you said that you were going to meet some friends. It would be more convenient to deal with the matter of gear." Of course I said that." Xie Juanping put on an innocent face. "But didn't I tell you? Vice President Tang Yi of the Mystic Arts Research Society has the highest chance of ascending. Her nickname is Blood Peony. She's a standard beauty complex. You can't even get close to her unless you're a handsome guy over 80 points. Even if you do get close, most of them will be trampled into the dirt. Right now you're relying on your Shota face. You're barely able to muddle along with being delicate and cute. If you don't pull yourself together, your future will be unpredictable." Luo Nin let out a long sigh. He simply closed his eyes completely. He was too lazy to say anything more. But at this time, the heart lantern burned in his brain. The flames burned brightly, but lost its harmony. Clearly, the 60th electric shock had stuffed the heart lantern too full. Restoring the heart lantern to the eye's orifice would certainly form pressure on the incomplete structure. This was a situation that needed to be dealt with first. Luo Nin was used to this. He didn't open his eyes. His fingertips fumbled with the notebook, flipping it to the back. He found a flat piece of soft paper sandwiched between the pages. The paper was thin and a bit rough, but it was valuable. This was a paper talisman that Mr. Gao had personally made. It was quite extravagant for Luo Nin to use it for practice. He stroked the paper in his hand, recalling the techniques that Papercut had taught him. His fingertips moved, and he folded the paper talisman in a simple manner. He held it in his palm. His eyes could not see, but the heart lantern was focused. In his brain, the flames suddenly flared and then extinguished. In this instant, Luo Nin's hand that held the paper talisman felt as if it had been burned by an incorporeal flame. A burning pain pierced through him. His 5 fingers instinctively opened, and it seemed as if some ash impurities were leaking out from between his fingers. Then there was a very real feeling of impact. Luo Nin's 5 fingers closed once more. Only then did he open his eyes to look. There was no paper talisman at this time. All he saw was a paper man with all 4 limbs. It had a muddle-looking face, and it was about the size of a palm. It had collided with the inner edge of Luo Nin's thumb, and then it went limp. The open car frame sent a cool breeze over, and the paperman's hands and feet shook. There was no other reaction besides this. Chapter 289. My luck is pretty good. Luo Nan's gaze swept over the paperman's body a few times. He flipped the notebook to a blank page and placed the paperman inside. There were already 3 similar interlayers as he flipped through the pages. There were a total of 4 paper men hidden in the notebook, including this one. Some were bigger, some were smaller, but the material was the same. These paper men were created by Luo Nan when his eyes' orifices were overflowing and the pressure was overloaded. They were created to shift the pressure. There were 60 lightning strikes. Aside from the first 7 times the heart lantern was extinguished, there were also the broken and basically balanced rounds. There were a total of 25 times when the pressure had to be shifted. However, only 4 succeeded in the end. The success rate was only 16%. It was pitifully low. Even so, he had to record it down. Luo Nan opened the flexible e-ink screen and recorded the data. Basically, he treated the paper men as this week's homework. He was going to give them the paper cut to look over later. He felt that these paper men were quite different from the works he made when he first started learning. At the very least, the way they were cut was quite cool. Luo Nan put away his pen and blew away the ashes stuck between his fingers. He blinked his eyes, but he felt his eyes become a bit dry. He closed his eyes and looked within himself. He saw that the glow of the heart lantern was quite weak. It was even weaker than it was before he received the blessing. Luo Nan was not surprised. He was still a novice when it came to soul strength activation. He was far from being precise. He had clearly used too much strength this time. The consumption was too great. He wasn't in a hurry to recover because he would need to transport his soul strength out of the My Heart to Prison format if he did so. The external neuron might give him a fierce blow. It really wasn't worth it. He allowed the vitality of his body to naturally nourish and recover. Although it took a long time, it was stable. It could be said that he had a degree of relaxation. In the front seat of the sightseeing bus, Xie Junping spoke of the blood peony. Oh, he spoke of gear. He was still in high spirits. A woman as powerful as Tang, he needs someone even more powerful to conquer her. Otherwise, she needs to do what she likes. Nanster, you really don't lose out. You can tell that she's a great beauty just by looking at her nickname. Today is the 25th. The 30th is Monday's gear auction. Time is tight, and the task is heavy. I can't drag this out any longer. Luo Nan raised his leg and kicked the front seat, giving Xie Junping a warning. Then he changed the topic to a normal direction. Do you have any idea of a base price for both sides? There is no definite news at the moment, only rumors. Xie Junping shrugged his shoulders. Sissy Du's face is covered in dirt, and he's been kicked out of his house. His connections in the society have been cut off by quite a bit. He only mentioned it briefly, saying that the backer behind the Mystic Arts Research Society wants to cooperate with the Construction Society. Cooperation? That's impossible, right? Luo Nan was quite surprised. Wasn't the Order of Justice behind the Mystic Arts Research Institute? Behind the Construction Society was the Rainbow Fund, which was equivalent to Quantum Corporation. What was the point of putting these 2 families together? Isn't capital something that can change at will? However, it was rumored that the main reason was because the Mystic Arts Research Society had changed their financial backer. It used to be a religious group, but now it had changed to a research fund. It was quite famous. Oh, I mean in our circle, LCRF, Life Cycle Research Fund. Hey, you've heard of it? Xie Junping was very surprised and turned to look at him. I thought you didn't care about these things. I just heard about it. In the next 2 days. Luo Nan spent most of his energy on the heart lantern of the eye's orifice over the past 10 days, but the training courses arranged for him by the society were still ongoing. Aside from Crag Burst and Red Fox's practical courses, several courses had to be adjusted back due to interference power. Luo Nan also persisted in studying the related theories of the Soul Strength Activation Techniques course. He would occasionally do experiments to adjust. Otherwise, the small paperman in his notebook would not exist. Luo Nan's reaction to the information about the Life Cycle Research Fund was lightning fast. This was because the fund was mentioned in He Yuin's World Order inside and outside the Psychic Wave Network and Bamboo Pole's notes on major characters of the world. On the surface, it was funded and established by a few top tycoons. Its main investment direction was the classical direction of human life extension. It was an important investment fund in the field of biology, and it was a large financial backer of many important biological laboratories. However, the fund had close ties with the political and military circles of the inner world. It was practically an open secret. The fund also cooperated with various powers of the inner world. Many important projects were listed there, including the Frost River Waterway, which Luo Nan was very familiar with. Strange, strange. Luo Nan raised his head and leaned against the back of his chair. He stared blankly at the sky. The Life Fund, Quantum Corporation, and the previous order are all interested in gear. Why? He asked himself this question, not expecting to receive an answer. He never expected that Xie Jinping would immediately follow up. Sissy Du said that gear's architectural structure is very suitable for carrying out mysterious rituals. In the past, the Order Club was also known as the Ritual Society by people in the circle. Acumen College's fraternity and sorority societies have held initiation ceremonies here several times. They even had drug parties and the like. It's said that the effects here are much stronger than outside. Xie Jinping had been speaking casually, but he turned his head and saw Luo Nan frown. He hurriedly stopped talking, but after a long while, he couldn't help but say, "It's me. I also think it's a bit interesting. It's especially comfortable over there. My brain works fast and my eyes and ears are sharp. Also, sometimes I can see things even without opening my eyes. Transparent. Nanster, tell me, am I going to rush towards superpowers?" Luo Nan was speechless. He didn't know how to respond. Xie Jinping's interest was piqued. "I didn't realize it before, but I've been interacting with Sissy Du these past few days. He's really an interesting fellow. His stomach is filled with goods, and the fields he's come into contact with are very diverse and very interesting. All right, are you two free on Sunday?" Sissy Du said that there's some Starry Sky Club that hold a mystic art salon every Sunday. There are many people with abilities inside. It's very interesting. How about we go take a look? I don't understand anything about the mystic arts. Shui Lei responded awkwardly. His horizons have been greatly broadened during this time. His understanding of the inner world grew deeper and deeper. He was already pondering about joining the Wilderness Explorer Society. How could he possibly go to that completely unreliable so-called mystic art salon? Nanster? I've already contacted them on Sunday. I'm going to send them over for repair. Luo Nan also declined the invitation. And this was the truth. He really was going to the repair center. Xie Jinping was a bit disappointed. Then forget it. I wanted you guys to help me take a look. Cough, I was just saying. Shui Lei turned to look at Luo Nan. His eyes probably said, "This bro doesn't know anything." Luo Nan shook his head slightly. Xie Jinping certainly knew that Luo Nan possessed a certain superpower. Xie Jinping was quite reverent towards this, and he was also a bit curious. Luo Nan didn't take the initiative to talk about it. After all, there were differences in their circles. It was hard to understand without personal experience. It would only cause confusion in one's heart. But thinking deeper, Xie Jinping had a place in the format pyramid. Xie Jinping was a believer, even if he was a level 1 apprentice, and the strict rules of the format pyramid could still affect him. Luo Nan thought about his own hardships and felt that he really needed to carefully examine Xie Jinping when he had the time. This was to prevent this friend of his from receiving any negative impacts. Now wasn't the best time to discuss this sort of thing. Luo Nan's thoughts spun, and he thought of something else. He said to Shui Lei, "Did you bring that thing over?" The topic changed too quickly. Shui Lei didn't react for a time. "What?" "The mechanical device inside the Tai Chi ball. It needs to be repaired." Luo Nan was speechless towards Shui Lei. "I told you 2 days ago. Bamboo Pole introduced me to a very powerful mechanic. I brought it over. Shui Lei patted his head and reached his hand into his pocket. He felt empty, and this big guy could only laugh awkwardly. "I stuffed it into the locker this morning. I forgot to take it out. Should I go get it now?" "Forget it. You can give it to me tomorrow morning." Though Xie Jinping didn't understand what the two were talking about, He looked all around and said, "Is the main locker room in the South 2 district?" "We're in the South 1 district. It's not that far. There's no harm in going over. Let's change hands early so that we don't forget tomorrow. Your memory has been like that for the past few days." "That's fine." Luo Nan and Shui Lei both agreed. But after a brief pause, Luo Nan found Xie Junping's words strange. "What's wrong with my memory?" Xie Junping made a U-turn as he chuckled. "I told you a long time ago that Jim, Archbishop Xiu's disciple, has amazing abilities. For me to pay my respects and learn some kung fu. Neither of you remember." The two, who had been rebuked, glanced at each other. They were both a bit embarrassed. Actually, it wasn't that their memories were bad. It was just that after Shui Lei mentioned it, Xiu Xinyu had rejected him with a single word. There was no room for discussion. Xiu Xinyu's straightforward attitude made Luo Nin feel a bit overwhelmed by the favor. That's right. This was the feeling. Why did Gym Master Xiu agree to teach him kung fu so easily back then? The sightseeing bus stopped outside the main locker room amidst the stuttering responses of the two ability users. Shui Lei hurriedly got off the bus to retrieve the item. Luo Nan and Xie Junping chatted here and there, but the topic of gear never strayed away. Halfway there, Luo Nan subconsciously turned on his flexible e-ink screen. He used his status as a member of the society to pull out the architectural blueprints and other information from the internet. He looked at the intertwining gears of different sizes. It was both creative and had a strict and unique aesthetic. In the end, Luo Nan cared quite a bit. If it was just a rainbow font, Luo Nan could more or less understand. After all, Yin Yongbua was the leader. Yin Yongbua certainly wanted to seize back the laboratory and clear the name of his deceitful father. However, whether it was the Life Cycle Research Fund or the Order of Justice, they all more or less paid attention to gear. Was it just because of the mysterious ritual? Looking back, what was his mother's goal in designing and building gear? Was it just like the information said? Was it her graduation work, a pure architectural art? Was it that simple? Luo Nan looked at the image of a refreshing woman on the information file, and his mind was in a trance. He stared blankly, until Xie Junping snapped his fingers in a flirtatious manner and called out, "Beauty, a chance encounter is better than a chance encounter. Want to hitch a ride?" Luo Nan raised his head and saw a figure walk out from the main locker room. It wasn't Shui Lei. It was just as Xie Junping said. It was a beauty above average. You're tuning in to the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.